This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to your African safari live. Welcome to your live safari, all different locations joining us today. It's going to be myself and Steve to start, but we're going to send you across to have a look at the weather at all the locations. Good afternoon, my name is Deirdre. I'm here at Tswalu. On camera with me today is Morgan. And our first stop in the afternoon, literally right out of the lodge, is a beautiful big male giraffe. So our plan today is just to head into the dunes. We've been having great successes over the last few days with some general game, and we'll see where we go from there. So he's just standing there, just chewing. Taryn is commenting that giraffe are always amazing. I agree, they are very beautiful. And I've never met anybody that doesn't want to see a giraffe. Everybody always wants to see a giraffe on their first trip to Africa, as well as a zebra, believe it or not. And this giraffe is busy regurgitating his food. You can actually see that if you just watch, when he stops chewing, you'll see the bolus of food go down his throat. And then it goes all the way down into the stomach, and then another ball comes up. You just see this little, it's almost like the lift going to the top floor. You could almost put a little sound clip so that he's saying, "Good afternoon, everybody on Safari Live." So he's got lots of, almost like little fingers in his cheeks that help with that breaking down of the food. There we go. We wait for he stops chewing to see. There it goes down. Now watch. It's going to come up. Here it comes. It is always a strange thing to see. So the giraffe here, you can actually see they're almost taller than the trees in the background. There are some really big camel thorns, but on really hot days, they do tend to lie down in the heat of the day, where other giraffe in other areas would feel vulnerable to lie down during the day. The ones here, it's just too hot. So don't forget to ask us all your questions. You can do #WildEarth and put @FC in front of the question, but I'm going to send you across to Steve that wants to say hello.
Hi, Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Final Control Dan Cam, where it is raining, and it has not stopped raining all day. My name is Steve, and I'm on the dam cam with myself, and the rain, potentially, precipitation recorded today is only 20%, so sometimes I wonder at the forecasts. But it is 25 degrees Celsius, 77 degrees Fahrenheit, and as always, we are very excited to have you with us. I am nice and dry here, far drier than these impalas as they chew the cud outside. And of course, we are available for questions and comments using hashtag WildEarth on Twitter, at FC on YouTube. And if you have any questions and you're under the age of 18, feel free to get them sent through via email to kidsquestions@wildearth.tv. Don't forget to register on the website. Head over to the live Safari page where you can submit your questions there. So as you've already seen, Deirdre is out. Lauren is standing by to head out, but at the moment it is far too wet to be going anywhere. And Ngala as well as andBeyond Phinda are both at home because of the rain. So for now, it is the Deirdre and Steve show. So we do welcome you on board this live African safari for the afternoon. And JP, well, that can't be true. Every animal is out and about in the rain. These are just the only ones at the moment that we can see. Everything is out there. Some animals are in their burrows, but for the most part, apart from us, everything is just standing in the rain under a tree getting wet. There's nothing to be done about it. Hippos are in the dams getting wet. Elephants are outside getting wet. Some birds might have found some shelter, but invariably are getting wet. So that is the way it is. The seasonality. Rain is a natural phenomenon in these parts of the world in the summer months. These animals have evolved with it. I can't say it's pleasant, but it is what they do. We've only had 10 millimeters of rain according to the chart today, but it feels like it's been far too much. It hasn't stopped. Yes, Lana, they do shake. I wouldn't say they shake like a dog, but they do shake. And stamp and flick their ears, as you can see. Right now they're just chewing the cud, maximizing their input of vegetation, chopping the food down into much smaller parts, and hoping that the rain maybe lets up a little bit, but it has not done much. We do feel sad for these animals sometimes. Now, please, everybody, it's going to be one of those very slow afternoons due to the rain. So if you have any discussion or questions, please send them through. Otherwise, there's going to be lots of silent moments with the rain falling down. Mooney, you want to know if animals have tactics for wet weather? Well, I'm not sure what you mean by tactics, but staying dry is, I suppose, a tactic. And there's not much that can be done. Standing in the shade of a tree, perhaps. That also possibly occurs lightning strikes, but there's really nothing to be done from a tactical point of view. Many animals will go to high ground where the ground is not wet, where they're able to not slip and slide in the mud, but invariably herbivore animals like this with hooves are very susceptible to slipping in the mud, and it's a great time for predators to hunt because they're able to change the structure of their foot, able to splay it out, their toes, maximizing the surface area. in that regard, they're able to then increase the surface area and then run better in the mud. So giraffe, being so top heavy, are very susceptible to being taken down in the wet because they can slip and slide. Buffalo, if they get their feet taken out from under them, are much easily brought down. So invariably, we often find after rainfall events like this, leopards with kills, lions having made kills. We don't always get to them because we're not always able to get out and about into this weather. But for the most part, these poor animals have a very hard time in the rain. It does eliminate the sounds though, and the wind isn't really there, so you can't really, the predators can't really smell their prey. They have to find them by sight. So they do lots of searching. Okay, well, I'll be right here, and we'll send you over to Deirdre over in Tswalu Kalahari, who's trying to stay dry.
We are trying to stay dry indeed. We also have clouds on the horizon, but they're holding themselves at bay at this stage. It is always nice at Tswalu. As soon as you cut to Tswalu and you see that red soil, all of you know that you are at the location in the Kalahari. But what we have there is there's a clue. We always ask, well, sort of who done it. So we want to know who's been here and who's been digging. But when you look at what they've been digging for, so this is an eland bean. This little This is an eland bean. It normally has quite a big flat pod. We don't have any pods at the moment. And it's been totally dug out and chewed on all the way here and all of that. Plus they've actually dug the root out. So now it automatically gives you an idea of who could it be because of what they are feeding. So this is definitely an animal that likes to eat roots and tubers. Are there any guesses on the chat stream before I reveal? Let me see if I can see any tracks. So it came in from here, from this side in the tracks, and it was digging. So nice, quite wide digging marks, dug this out, and pretty much just chewed the edge or the outer layer of the tuber. Didn't really eat too much of it. Maybe there was something else in there that it liked. So I didn't know who answered aardvark. I didn't hear the name. But remember that this is eating a plant. So now aardvark generally eating ants and termites. So this is a plant eater. So we've got to have another guess at who might it be. It'd probably be two that I would think of off the top of my head. So the other animals that we do sing... Chevy is correct. Chevy's answer is porcupine. So I agree. Porcupine, I concur. It came in here and dug quite furiously, ate a little bit of the root. Not so much of the tuber. It looked like it was more going for the roots, actually, and just sort of the outer casing, and then left it and moved on. The other one that would dig like this that you'd look for tracks as evidence would be baboons. They also dig up some of these tubers and feed on that, but a baboon is not going to leave that amount of tasty morsel behind. It's going to eat everything that it manages to dig up. So the baboons will use their sort of their hands to dig. Good guess. Porcupine. So I don't know if we've managed, I think Tswalu has managed to put a porcupine on air before, but maybe come more towards the winter season when they start coming out a little bit earlier in the evening within drive time. At the moment, they're still relatively late risers. They're only going to come out when it's dark, sort of 9, 10 o'clock. I've even seen porcupine at sort of 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, so they are in the nocturnal space. So it's just lots of different birds talking at the moment. We get the little monotonous lark. that's calling, and that looks like maybe, I don't know if it's going to stay there long enough, but there's a little, looks like a sunbird on the top of that tree there. Hopefully it stays. The sunbirds are feeding on these matchstick mistletoes, so it is quite a tiny little sunbird. Oh. As is typical. So the sunbird, I'll go forward. This is a nice example here. This one's a bit closer for the camera. So the sunbird is actually coming to get the nectar reward out of these flowers here, and that's known as the matchstick mistletoe. It does look like a matchstick. And there'll be a little nectar reward at the bottom. When the sunbird puts its beak in that tube, then it'll get the pollen on the head flying from different mistletoes to different mistletoes, thereby pollinating them. But the mistletoe itself gets there by the seeds. The seeds are nice and tasty, they're nice and sticky, and the birds will eat those, chew that up, and then the seeds get stuck to the edge of the beak. They'll fly somewhere else, wipe their beak off, and then the seeds are then transported and planted somewhere else. And then they will sort of get their roots down into the moisture of the plant. So they're looking, the mistletoe is stealing the nutrients and the water from the plant, but photosynthesizing for itself.
Do you dream of traveling to a far-flung wilderness location where life continues as normal? A place where you can escape to nature and breathe. If you become a WildEarth explorer, then this could soon become a reality. Subscribe today and stand a chance to win regular travel prizes. WildEarth Explorers, it's in your nature.
Sometimes love wants to make you sing. And sometimes love wants to make you bow and fan your wings to your bow. For the southern yellow-billed hornbill, these are signs that love is in the air. These birds are destined for a season of monogamy at least. Breeding pairs are in it for the survival of their chicks. But before love commences, the male needs to woo his valentine with food in the form of nuptial gifts.
I'm Nikki here at andBeyond in Ngala in South Africa. I love getting questions from viewers about all the small things within the environment and how it all is integrated with one another. If you want to ask me any questions, please simply register with the WildEarth website, head across to the Live Safari page, and then post your questions there. I'm looking forward to chatting to you on my next WildEarth drive.
Guys, have a look at what we've got. This is better than my birthday. Look at that. This is the first time that I ever see cubs this small. This is so special. This has officially just become my best sighting of all times.
Tune into WildEarth every single day. It's in your nature.
Hi, I'm Kyle, and I come to you live every day here from Tswalu Kalahari in South Africa. My favorite animal in the Kalahari has to be the aardvark. Its unique appearance, its ethology, and as well as ecology within this vast ecosystem is amazing, and something that I have been really lucky to experience on foot here at Tswalu.
Catch up with the guides daily here on WildEarth.
So we've just stopped here at this beautiful clump of, well, it looks like just green leaves, but they're called flannel weeds. It literally is, if I touch the leaves and I rub them, it's like a face cloth. It's so soft. Beautiful area, and then generally in areas that are open, sort of disturbed areas, you see a lot of the flannel weed. We've also got a lot, maybe I can do like a reveal. There's lots of the armored ground crickets out at the moment as well. Maybe move that one. But if I go anywhere near him, then he's going to move. But you can actually get in pretty close. Do you see him there, Morgan? This one. one leaf in the way, this one. That one. Okay, sorry, there was a leaf in the way. So now you're able to see the armored ground cricket, and you can actually see the armor with the spikes on the top of the head. It's almost like a shield that it wears on its back. There's 2 of them there. These are quite small ones. These ones are still have to grow a little bit. But they will eat these leaves, no problem at all. And they're also cannibalistic. They'll also eat each other if there's a roadkill or something like that. You can actually see lots of different... There's all different sizes amongst here, and that's as they grow, so they change. Whoops. So very, very long antennae. From where he is, his antennae is coming to down about there. So almost 2 inches, his antennae, for all the sensory smell. Oh. As I'm moving all the bushes, they're picking up that movement, so they're panicking a little bit. Oh, there's a nice... On the sour grass here. Don't know if you can see that. There's a nice butterfly here. Got him? What do I need to move? Some flannel weeds. There we go. I'm trying to help Morgan here because it's not always easy at this close distance with the camera work, so... A very tatty butterfly. It's pretty much missing the back half of the front wing, but that's okay. As long as they've got that front edge, they can carry on flying. But as soon as they have a break in that front edge, then they're doomed, unfortunately. So that's the really old one. That's made it right through the entire season, not doing too badly. And it looks like it's just taking a rest there on the sour grass. I'm going to let go, and then maybe we can have a look at the landscape scene in general. Just so you get all these beautiful clumps of camel thorns. Kylie's asking the question, how long can these weeds last without water? A weed is an amazing thing. They're quite hardy things, so they can last quite a long time without water. But we've just had exceptional rains this season, so everything is flourishing. Every single thing that was lying dormant as a seed, just waiting for ideal conditions, has practically exploded all over the place. I mean, we're getting these beautiful sort of Kalahari sunflowers under each one of those camel thorns. You just see sort of a bed of yellow flowers under each one of those. They produce a lot of seeds, so the year after the next and the year after the next, you get more and more of them. But what amazes me is just the sheer change in less than 6 months. 6 months ago, this was sand with very, very sparse grass cover. Very sparse grass cover, because we'd had sort of 5-6 years of drought, and there were the odd number of plants. And then you had exceptional rains. 3 times already the annual expected rainfall at this stage, and we haven't even finished the rainy season. And then you have this explosion of plants. So sour grass, most of the sour grass is sort of a month or 2. Yeah, maybe 2 months now, and it's already at maturity and being pollinated, distributing seeds already. So the animals like springbuck, we used to find them in these open clearings because they had really good visibility. Now they've had to move out of these areas because now suddenly the grass is as high as the poor springbuck. So they don't like that type because then they can't see if there's any predators. So they've moved into areas where the grass layer is much shorter. Even the wildebeest are staying out of these areas. The sour grass has like a sticky residue that if you walk through it for very long, your own legs and everything start itching, and it will be exactly the same for the animals. Also, if they eat too much of it, then they land up with sort of like ulcers and blisters around their mouth. So it's not their choice grass, so they'd move out of those areas, and that's why there's not much around. So I hear the question from Nina is, what animals are weed controllers at Tswalu? That's the problem with a weed, actually, is that a weed doesn't come necessarily with any of its natural predators. So they do tend to take over in an area, and there's no biological control, not necessarily insects that eat it, that knock it back a little bit. But you'll find if it is a tasty weed, then the animals will eat it and thereby sometimes distribute the seeds to different areas. But the weeds are there for a purpose. They're almost pioneers. So they grow, they create shade, they anchor the soil, they hold everything together, and then it allows the next layer of plants, which what they would call the subclimax plants, to start establishing themselves. And then once those get bigger and stronger than some of the weeds, then you land up also with potentially the climax plants. So they are part of a process. So it's called a natural succession. So it starts off with pioneers, which generally are the weeds. They'll cover an open area and create ideal habitats for the next sets of plants to come in and generate. Let's see, I think there might be a springbok down the road. Let's see. So we're going to send you to Steve at the dam cam and carry on and see what we can find.
Thanks, Steve. Well, nice to see that it's nice and dry on your side of the world there. The rain is still pelting down, but such interesting questions about weeds, what many people call weeds. You know, we often associate a weed as being a problem plant, but many weeds are nitrogen fixers. Many weeds have got enormous amounts of nitrogen in them themselves, so they're very palatable, they're very tasty, and as Deirdre said there, they are pioneers. So you find areas, and Deirdre and I used to work at Sagita in the Kruger Park. You used to find areas we call sodic patches, whereby the topsoil layer has actually been removed and there's a huge change in the pH due to the nature of the soil and how it reacts with water. And in the dry season, you'll find those areas devoid of vegetation completely. But in the summer months, suddenly an area that had nothing at all suddenly looks like this, for example, with just all these forbs and plants coming through. And I've got a picture of 9 species of animal in one shot with my camera, all feeding on the wildflowers, or the weeds, as many of us will call them. They have very high seed loads. They're often seeds that are stored in the soil for a period of time. And as Deirdre rightly said, they're pioneers, and the purpose of a pioneer is to protect the soil, to move into an area where conditions are unsuitable for others. And as we know, pioneers pave the way for other species to move in. Just like the word pioneer in human times, a pioneer is someone who goes somewhere and does something unique and does something to make it more suitable. The old pioneers of old, the pioneers in South Africa and to the Old West, the Far West, whatever it used to be called, they went into very hospitable environments and they managed to survive, and they sort of put down the groundwork for others to move in. And that's exactly what a pioneer does. A pioneer, for example, if we had a look at the road over here on the camera, you'll see the road is exposed. Pioneers would move in and would be the first ones to be able to grow on that open, exposed area. There's no moisture, there's no shade, there's almost very limited nutrients, because nutrients are often created by a microorganism component in the soil. And if you've got sun baking the ground there's almost nothing happening. But just on the left of the screen, there's sort of in the middle of the road, there is a weed coming through, a forb, that it would be a pioneer. And there at the top of the screen, a little bit just on the road over there, is actually the small devil thorn, one of the paper thorns, which is actually quite an invasive weed here as well. But what they do is they move in and they cover the soil. They provide shade. Their material themselves starts to break down and turn back into the soil. So there's organic material being released. They provide shade from the sun. They absorb moisture and hold moisture so it doesn't dry out. That shade element makes a huge impact on other species. The plant themselves then holds any seeds that might blow through. The plants themselves also attract certain herbivores to move through and feed on them. It might not be the most amazing food. They don't produce enormous amounts of food, but they produce enormous amounts of seed. And that is classic of a pioneer. Very small leaf material, huge amount of seed. And those seeds, many of them are lost, many of them are turned back into the soil, many of them are collected by ants and termites and brought back into the ground where the process continues. So you get the pioneer that sediments this area here, then another plant, as Deirdre said, the subclimax will then move in where the shade is better, and then it produces deeper roots, more organic material, less amounts of seed. It's more palatable, so more tasty for the herbivores. More herbivores arrive, they do more churning up of the soil, they deposit more dung, more urine, and then slowly but surely the vegetation changes from one of devoid vegetation to one of complete ground cover. It goes into a stage we call climax vegetation, and that is when you've got all of your best vegetation, the ground is covered, the ground is protected. I mean, just imagine how much more animals or organisms, very small organisms, could live there on the sand versus right there in the dense vegetation. It's an enormous amount. The species composition in itself is huge. So the sort of movement around with regards to how these plants interact with the soil and with the environment are vitally, vitally important. And it's something I'm definitely going to touch on more in the coming days. But it sounds like Lauren has gotten herself on camera and she's got some exciting news for you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is extremely wet out here, as you can probably tell. And, well, we're not actually going to go anywhere. We are going to sit here and show you how wet it is and let you know that we actually can't go anywhere. And I do have good news for you. But first I must introduce myself, Lauren, my cameraman, Mpo, and my assistant. I don't know what my assistant's doing. Do you not want to say hello? A little bit shy. This is Wally, everyone. Now, Wally is a wild animal. I just want not a pet, but just determined to follow every single one of us wherever we go. We sit at the dinner table, Wally's there. We jump in the car, Wally jumps in the car. Whatever we do, Wally's there. We exercise at the gym, Wally's there. We go to the jam camp, Wally is there. So just wanted to show you Wally, everyone. He said hi before, but he wanted to say hi again. I think he's maybe been abandoned by his mother. He's not a pet. He sleeps out in the wild. He's wild. He just seems to be really a big fan of the WildEarth crew. I mean, who wouldn't be? So, Wally, that's your claim to fame, boy, okay? Be happy. Yes, don't worry. It's far too wet. So we're ready. We're geared up to go. But if it obviously subsides, we'll be out. If not, then I will be joining Steve at the jam camp. But I do have some very important news for you. So I am going to announce the hyena names. And the hyena names, the choice of name for Junebug has been chosen. And it is Novella, everybody. It's Novella. Yes, that was my number one. So thank you, everyone, for voting. Yimisela was second, and Shishleko, which I struggled to say with my swollen... there's Wally. We're struggling to say with my swollen mouth. But yes, Novella is a name for Junebug, so it will always be Junebug to us, but her official name is Novella, which means adore, which is so wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for voting. We are going to go back to camp now because it's a little bit too wet, but Impo, Wally, and I will come out if it subsides.
So this chap also has a name. This is Zorro, and he's our leopard printed Appaloosa. So at Tswalu, you can go on any number of horse rides, and Zorro is one of those ones that enjoys going on horse rides. At the back there is the little stables mascot, the little pony for the kids. That is Licorice. Licorice, I told viewers a story about Licorice a while ago. Licorice is the one that took 6 rounds with the puff adder and beat the puff adder. And the brown one in the background there is Timmy, and Timmy is one of the lead horses. So everybody likes to follow Timmy. And I think if you see the other spotty one behind Timmy, I don't know if you can, that is Shiraz. So we've got 2 leopard print Appaloosas. And, oh no, that's not exactly the nicest view of that one. So they're just getting their afternoon munchies. There's no rides today, but some of them will go out on their trail ride tomorrow morning. So the animals just see horses like another animal. They smell like an animal. The horses, on the horses, human smell is completely disguised. And we are able to get up quite close to animals like giraffe, wildebeest, sable. They don't worry too much about the horses at all. So it's like a game of musical chairs or musical feed bowls. The one in the background there with the white backside is Trojan, but he's more of a paint. If I understand, Hillary asks us, how do we protect the horses from humans, is how I understood it. That's an interesting question. Here comes Trojan, so musical food boxes. Yes, good afternoon. How we protect them from humans, I'm not too sure. I have an answer for that one. So here, the stables, they get fed twice a day, they get groomed, they get shampooed, they even get extra special pellets depending on how old they are. Some of them get all their little nutrients and vitamins in different pellets, each in their own stables. They have their own exclusive accommodation. They even have their own horse blanket in winter. It does get pretty chilly here. Greg is asking the question, is there enough dry grass in Tswalu at the moment? So, no. So, dry grass for them like this is a supplement to guarantee that they're getting enough food. But before all the sour grass flowerwood, they were out in the paddocks feeding on any grass. So they can choose fresh green grass. That's what they actually prefer. But once this is dry grass, this gets them through the winter season. And this is also to ensure that every horse gets enough from a nutrient value every single day as you always feed them, and then you start upping their feed a little bit in the winter months when they're not getting as much. But we do in the summer, as soon as the grasses start, we do let them out and they go feeding, and they feed themselves on some of the nice grasses that are around. And even in the winter season, they can find some of the grasses that are dry as well. They don't mind that. So they get a little bit of freedom of pick and choose, but this is feeding them like this is grass that is brought in by the truckload. Just to give you an idea, we buy 700 bales and it feeds them for about 6 months. So that comes in on a double axle trailer that's piled about 6 bales high. 700 bales is a lot of hay to offload. It takes the guiding team about an hour and a half, the guiding and the tracking team together, to offload that many bales. So we also often have, there's lots of wattled starlings in the paddock at the back. As the horses move, and horses are wild animals, I mean, not wild animals, but they are animals, they bring in lots of flies and other things, insects, so that's what the wattled starlings on the ground in the background there are coming in for. Also any messed grass seeds or any opportunity to find food. Even the squirrels, they drink out of the water troughs. We've got one cheeky wildebeest that jumps the paddock fence like he's a show jumper, and also nibbles some of the food when the horses have moved on, and also goes and drinks at the water trough. So that's Zeus, the brown one, feeding with Zorro. Another musical feed change. So if you're loving the horses, you need to find your way to Tswalu, and you can come and ride one of these. Rusty is asking the question, how do horses react to lions on a horseback? So the horses are trained to, if they do see lions, they stand their ground and then you would move off. Horses are also much larger than a lion, so sometimes they would show interest, but they would rather move off. Sometimes also the person riding the lead horse will have a whip or something that they can make a loud noise, and then maybe the lions would move off. But horses do have to be trained to approach lions, or bump into lions, should I say. It's not that you want to approach them with horses, but if you do bump into them, the horses do need to know that they have to stand their ground, and then you move away slowly. We've had, interesting interactions. Even the wild dogs sometimes come into here and have fun and games with the horses, but the horses are so much bigger that they just land up chasing them. So the dogs sort of, they play a game of tag. They come in, they make a little bit of a yipping noise, and then the horses chase them out, and then they lie just outside the paddock looking at the horses for a while, and then they get bored, and then they move on. So at the back there, that is Lancelot, and Lancelot's the brown one, and Dollar is the white one. And in the far background, the other white one is Galaxy. So
it is fantastic seeing you all again. Those who haven't met me, my name is Dylan, in what is undoubtedly a very, very, very green Kalahari from what we were looking at a couple of months ago. We will be doing our very first fireside chat for WildEarth. So if you can join us on the 13th at about 7:30 after game drive, it would be an absolute pleasure. We'll see you there.
Sign up to become an explorer and join them by the fire straight after the sunset safari.
Riverbeds are a great way to find water and look for places where elephant have excavated hollows. You can then dig into the sand, and after a couple of feet you should find damp sand, which then can be squeezed out or siphoned off for water. And with water being one of our scarcest resources, it is a good idea to conserve water where and how you can.
My name is Ross, and I'm a field guide at andBeyond Phinda Private Game Reserve. I love getting questions from guests on WildEarth because I love sharing and learning information about nature with new people, and it also makes me feel like you're all joining me in real life. If you want to ask a question on WildEarth, then you need to register on our website. Once registered, go to our live safari page and submit your question below our live feed.
Look at this, the little one is up and about. Certainly hasn't had enough milk at this age. No amount of milk is enough. Oh, Corky. Too sweet. Oh, look at this. That is stunning.
Tune into WildEarth every single day. It's in your nature.
Hi, I'm Mike Anderson, and I come to you live every day from Eco Training Pridelands Conservancy in South Africa. The wild animal I think is most underrated. I think buffaloes are the most underrated. They're so tenacious and ferocious, and also very, very protective of each other, which I find incredible. You know, sometimes people think of the big five, they just think of lions and leopards and other big animals, but I think buffaloes are pretty underrated.
Catch up with the guides daily here on WildEarth.
Just going to show you, there's one of our little architectural marvels over here that Morgan will show you. It's one of the tallest trees in this open area, and it is covered in housing by the sociable weavers. So it's always nice to check. Whenever we get anywhere near one of these nests, we scan each and every one of them to see if there's not a Cape Cobra that's visiting the nest, to try and see if it can get any of the chicks for itself. Even the eggs, they don't mind, they're not too fussy. But at the moment it just looks like they're busy building. So in the fork of the tree down at the bottom, you can actually see a chunk of the nest has fallen out, or fallen down, broken off the tree. And that would be when we've had very, very heavy rains, that grass just gets so heavy that it can no longer hold, the branch of the tree can no longer hold the weight, and then it breaks and falls down. So becomes that they don't use it. They steal grass off it, but they don't use it. They abandon that section. But they're always building. For them, they need to just keep building right throughout the year, so that when conditions are ideal, they can breed as much as the season. So they can get 2 to 3 clutches of eggs out in one season, in one rain season, if it's really, really good. So they must always have their nest ready, so that as soon as there's a good spurt of rain, there's enough food available, and they can raise the chicks. So they'll feed the chicks mostly insects, but they themselves as adults will eat grass seeds. But it's just always a busy, busy hive of activity. And then we also always look for if there is a resident pygmy falcon, because normally they have one pair. Not every single sociable weaver's nest, but in general, the majority have a resident pygmy falcon. And that nest you can tell different from the others, because the pygmy falcons defecate at the entrance. So it makes this like sort of white, the white droppings mark the entrance to the pygmy falcon's nest. Vanessa is asking how long it takes them to build these nests. So it's to get some of the large nests that we're seeing, it's taking them years to build them, but they're very persistent. Everybody's always bringing grass back to the nest. So they start with they can start on a telephone pole. They just need a tee. They just need somewhere where they can put a couple of sticks of grass together, and then they start building from that. But as they work as a sort of a colony, they can build pretty quickly. But some of these nests are years old that they've been building and adding to them. But they do make a lot of noise. And they'd come out early morning, they feed, they go back, they feed, they go back, and then in the evening. So Leopard Girl's question is, will the weavers still nest there in winter? Absolutely. This is an all-year-round abode. In winter, what they do is more of them will cluster into one chamber. So you'll have 5 or 7 birds in one chamber, and then their own body heat, as well as the heat within the nest, will keep them nice and warm. And then in summer, when heat is not an issue, they'll move into nesting in different chambers. So one pair will have a nesting cavity, and they will then lay the eggs and have their chicks in one nest, and sometimes sort of 2 to 3 chicks per nest cavity. So you can just imagine how many hundreds of little birds are there when they've got lots of chicks. We're just going to go forward. There's a wildebeest that's not too far from us. He's just at what would be almost 11 o'clock. He looks just like a solitary bull. Oh, and there's 2 ostriches. I can just see two necks sticking out the grass. So let's show you the ostrich first before we land up going too far. You see them there, Morgan? literally just 2 necks sticking out the grass. Yes, there. The wildebeest is hiding behind that other tree, but there's 2 ostriches. Look like both male ostriches. And I can't see if they're standing or lying down, but relative to the wildebeest, I'd say that they are standing. At least the ostrich is tall enough to see over the grasses. So they'd be eating these armoured ground crickets. That's like a huge treat. It's easy pickings at the moment because you only have to walk a metre and you'll see an armoured ground cricket. So they will eat lots of those. But ostriches are also known for eating anything shiny, whatever they can pick up. They will sample it to see if it is food. And some of the original very, very large diamonds were actually even found in ostrich in Namibia. Was because they'd picked up some shiny stone. You can imagine whoever found that would have been a really lucky chap. So you can see they're also struggling. It's very humid today, and you can see that they'd struggle with the heat when their beak is open like that. There's a wildebeest in the background, so that's a different wildebeest, but there he's coming into the shot now. I just saw his tail moving. So another wildebeest bull. It'll be interesting to see when this other one sees that one. So we're talking about the ostriches struggling with the heat, how their beak is open. So Carmen is asking, do ostriches naturally lose their feathers? Yes, like any bird, they would molt their feathers as they're going through the process. Larger birds tend to take 2 to 3 years to molt through all their feathers to get new ones. But they'll never sort of lose everything and become completely naked. That would be detrimental to them because then they wouldn't be able to keep themselves warm. But they do lose feathers. And the ostrich feather industry in South Africa was originally started in sort of the Oudtshoorn area in the early years, where ostrich feathers became very popular for the ladies for decorative things in hats. And that was where the ostrich industry in South Africa started, was providing feathers, and those ostriches would get plucked. And then the feathers would grow back. So they had lots of ostriches for that. And then only in recent years has ostrich meat become a really, really good source of protein and no cholesterol. So the feather industry waned off after a while. So feather boas is also what, so the decorative feathers in the hats, and then feather boas, but it started waning off at when they invented cars, because then the ladies couldn't sit in those fancy open motor vehicles with the ostrich feather hat, because the hat would blow off or the feathers would break. So then they lost a little bit of popularity over the time, but by then there was lots of other things that ostriches could be used for. The other wildebeest is about to come. He was walking, now he stopped. So let me just go forward by about 2 meters. He's just behind the bush for Morgan. He's going to come, he's coming back there. There he is. Oh, very nice of him to have a look at us. There we go. So you can see, maybe they are lying down. I think that they might be. At a distance, it didn't look like it. They're far away, but we'll see what happens. If the wildebeest goes and suddenly the ostrich gets taller, then we'll know. Let's see what happens. This might be the first wildebeest-ostrich interaction you see on live TV. We just walk right past them, and they don't even budge. Okay. Partially disappointing. I thought we'd see something amazing, but clearly neither one is fazed by the other. Oh, isn't he a handsome chap? He's probably the one that jumps the fence at the stables. He's close enough to be the one that is the show jumper. He's making a little marking there, so it looks like he's defecating. He sort of drops his backside down, And then sometimes you'll see the scraping with the two front legs. So as the wildebeest leaves us, we're going to send you to Steve, who has some more impala on the dam cam.
Yeah, well, welcome back, and such interesting discussions there. So nice to see the sociable weaver nests and ostrich feather industry. It is a very interesting one. I've been down to the Oudtshoorn region of the world. It's not just famous for ostriches, it's also famous in South Africa for being one of the only places where people used to learn how to parachute in the army, because it was very low in wind, very, very low windy conditions down in Oudtshoorn. But a very interesting part of the world indeed. It's not far from the garden route where I like to spend a lot of time, very close to the Kango Caves. If you've ever been to the Kango Caves, everybody, there's some really good evidence of human existence and some very special, there we go, we just saw the impala shake like a dog. Very special sort of human story of how people lived in caves, and it goes in and in and in and deep and deep and deep. And there's two different types of tours you can do. One's the sort of the normal tour, which most people do, and one is the adventure tour. If you're claustrophobic, I don't advise doing it. Oopsie, what's going on? Very jumpy. They heard the word claustrophobic. They don't like tight spaces. But there are a couple of ways through the adventure tour, where one of them is called the post office or the post box, because you've literally got to crawl through like a little post box, little notch in the rocks. It's definitely worth doing if you aren't afraid of small spaces, and it's definitely doable. But there's potential to panic slightly in there. I've done it a few times, thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a very special place to be, and there's magical sort of cathedral-like stalagmite sort of cathedrals in there. Cenac nitrogen-fixing plants everywhere. All of the bean pods are nitrogen fixers. All of the bean pods, all the acacias, the sickle bush, number of the grasses, the C4 grasses, I can't think of which species at the moment. The cassias. So there are plenty of nitrogen-fixing plants. And nitrogen-fixing plants, everybody, is not necessarily the plant that does anything at all. No, doesn't that sound strange? The plant has got a symbiotic relationship with something called mycorrhizal bacteria. Now that bacteria grows on the roots of the plant as little hairs with little nodules, and they rely on the plant for survival, and the plant uses them to absorb more nutrients, because they've basically got much more finer root systems than the plant itself would have, and they themselves actually take nitrogen out of the atmosphere, because the atmospheric sort of percentage is about 70% nitrogen. And even in the soil, maybe not after today, the soil's saturated, hence why all the earthworms come up to the surface. So, but there is actually atmospheric sort of oxygen and nitrogen in the soil itself. And so nitrogen-fixing bacteria is able to take that gas and fix it into nitrates, NH4, which is then solidified in the soil and is very, very stable. Something that earthworms do with nitrogen-strong plants. If you've ever done any composting, and you throw a whole lot of compost in a pile and then you turn it, you get that grey residue with the steam. What's happened there is that's the sort of nitrogen burning off, and that nitrogen then gets released as methane. And if you're able to trap that methane or that nitrogen, then you can trap it as nitrates or nitrites in the soil. And what happens with that is once it's in the soil, the bacteria and microorganisms that live in the soil That's why we spoke earlier about the importance of vegetation covering the soil, because a nude, naked, sandy patch is very limited with the amounts of organisms that can live there. But put organic material there, cover it, mulch your gardens, mulch your herb beds, and you'll have bacteria and microorganisms living in the soil, and they'll be able to take the nitrates in the soil and turn it back into usable nitrogen, which the plants can use. So you can have very, very nutrient-rich soil, but no microorganisms. The plants won't be able to eat it up. So I like to sort of talk about it like if you think of a slush puppy. Everybody's had a slush puppy before, where you've got that liquid and the ice, and it gets to the point where you sucked all the liquid out and all there is ice. There's no more flavor. Now essentially the ice inside that slush puppy is the nitrates that are locked in the soil, and you need temperature to heat up the ice to then melt it back so it's liquid again. So essentially microorganisms are there to release the nitrates back into the solution. So if you have a plant that absorbs all of the solution, all of the nitrates and all of the nitrogen out of the liquid, you need the bacteria and microorganisms to release it back from the soil into plant usable form. Otherwise it just sits there locked in the soil. Very interesting, I think. These impalas are having themselves a nice meal. They were ruminating earlier, if you recall, when we saw them. Okay. Okay, well, it sounds like Deirdre has caught up with the feathered friend. Let's quickly send you over to her and see what she's got.
So we have caught up with the feathered friend, and it's actually stationary for a second. Look at that. That's a beautiful falcon. So looking at it, we get both the peregrine falcon and the lanner falcon here. But with the lanner falcon, you're looking for a reddish, rufusy coloured head. But the peregrine's got a black head. So this looks like a don't fly, please don't fly. This looks like a young lanner falcon. And those little sociable weavers better watch out, because the falcons are hot on their tails, the peregrine falcon the fastest, but I mean they at a solid swoop dive can clock over 300 kilometers per hour in a steep dive, which is a really, really impressive feat. So you see the sort of like tear markings that come down off the face. That's characteristic of the falcons. They have that sort of black line down the face. And why I say this one's a juvenile lanner is because of that head that hasn't quite got rufous yet. But that's normal in raptors where there's a youngster. They take 2 to 3 years, sometimes a little bit longer, to get their adult plumage. So by not having their full adult coloration, they're saying to other birds of the same species that they're not breeding as yet. So they don't necessarily want to get into an altercation or a fight. They basically, by having a plumage color that's slightly different, are saying almost, I'm still busy learning, give me a chance. So you can see that sort of sharp little hook on the beak. And Remedy's asking if they fly higher than most birds of prey. I'd probably say no, because they will be hunting birds, so they'll try and fly above that bird. But they're not flying at heights like vultures would be flying. I mean, the highest vulture recorded was something at like 11,000 feet, and that was a Ruppel's griffin. And that's really, really high up. That could have been a thermal that took it that high up. But the falcons would stay where they're hunting by eyesight. So they'd probably stay a little bit lower where they can see birds flying, but they'd try to be above them to come and hit them from above and behind. And they could chase them. So they're not necessarily high flyers, as it were. They do, so they'll nest on cliff faces. David is asking, what is the usual feeding range for these falcons? So for them, it's, if I understand feeding range, meaning what do they eat, it's mostly birds. That's why they need their speed. Sometimes they'll even eat bats. Sometimes we've seen them at termite emergencies as well, where there's lots of insect availability, and that's just a nice source of protein. And there he goes. Beautiful. So they'll even take reptiles, so we've been seeing a lot of those grounder gamas. They'll even take those, so reptiles, lizards, but predominantly birds, and that's how they'll use their speed, is to almost knock the bird out of the air, and then they will use their beak to break the neck vertebra, and then sometimes carrying it in their foot, and then landing on a perch and eating it there. It was a nice surprise. We don't see them that often. It's probably only the second or third one I've seen in a year, so it is nice to see them. Trying to miss every armoured ground cricket on the road is a little bit of a challenge because they are everywhere. So, sorry I didn't get the name there, but the question is there any area in Tswalu where the landscape is always red? Yeah, the soil is always red. In the dunes it's always red. But when the vegetation cover dies back, then we are seeing it a lot more. So now there's another raptor, and that is a pale chanting goshawk, and also a juvenile, because you can see the sort of brown barring on the side of the wing. Nice little bare legs, nice little orange bare legs, which will get more orange as it gets older, and even the cere, that sort of fleshy part on top of the beak, will get orange, and that little white eyebrow stripe also says juvenile. But when they are adults, they go to completely grey. So chanting goshawk because they actually have quite a nice song. Now, their speciality is lizards. They're pretty good at catching lizards. So nice long legs. You'll see if they fly down to the ground, then they would catch the lizard on the ground. And then once they've dispatched it on the ground, they'll fly up into the tree to eat that. Oh, I sort of can't wait. We'll see what's next. One raptor after the other is pretty impressive. So they're also choosing quite nice high perches to see for prey. I'm just amazed always that a bird from the top of a tree can see at a distance a little lizard. Even the snake eagles amaze me that from their height they're able to see snakes. So then I can probably, we can show you on here as well. So I'm going to show you what, in the book quickly, what an adult looks like. So it's this one over here. So completely grey in coloration is the pale chanting goshawk. And the long featherless legs, that's sometimes as a result that they don't want things to sort of bite them or get hooked up in their feet. There's no need for that. Whereas the true eagles sometimes have fully feathered legs. And then you see that sort of the very orange beak, which is why that one is still a juvenile. He's still there. So Dee says she finds it fascinating, the the difference between juveniles to adults. And in raptors, it's absolutely essential. I mean, I know that some of the other properties are able to show you battaliers, but for me, that's probably the most contrasting one, that it takes them 7 years to get to that adult plumage. I find that, which just shows you how long that they can live. So these ones would be 2 to 3 years, and that's just their learning phase. And there are actually quite a lot of other animals. There's even, I think off the top of my head, oh, did he just get mobbed? I don't even know what that was, but it was probably, oh, I don't know. He'll come back. He literally just got mobbed by something. I saw him fly off, and he hasn't come back. It might have been a starling or a drongo, something like that. That's just telling him, hey, you're in our area, you must go. And that's also sometimes the not so nice part about being a raptor, is that everybody wants you gone. Everybody wants you out of their territory. So they do have to tolerate being mobbed by other birds and shouted at and potentially picked and told to move on. But all he did was duck, and now he's fine. So I don't think he's going to sit there for too much longer, but beautiful to see him nonetheless.
Imagine having your own secluded African bush home where you and your friends can enjoy the ultimate safari experience. If you sign up to be a WildEarth explorer, this could become a reality. Tumbeta House is located in the heart of Djuma Private Game Reserve, the home of WildEarth. You could win a chance to stay at this intimate wilderness retreat, offering you the rare and highly sought-after privilege of your own home in the bush. The prize includes 3 nights for 6 people and includes daily game drives, a chance to see the WildEarth camp, and have dinner with one of our guides. Sign up to be a WildEarth explorer before the end of February 2021, and you could be heading to Djuma, the place that we call home. Available dates are limited, so terms and conditions apply.
So in 1998, we had this idea to go and put a live web camera on a waterhole somewhere in the Sabi sands next to the Kruger National Park. And I approached just about every single landowner, and everybody thought I was completely crazy until I met Yuri and Pippa Moorman.
We thought it was definitely a fun idea and a worthwhile thing to experiment.
And it immediately became a runaway success. And it gave people all around the world the opportunity to watch a little piece of Africa day and night. Back in 1998, it was the very early stages of the internet, and all we were able to do was to get a 30-second refreshing JPEG out of that camera. But over time, what we began to do is focus more and more on trying to develop this concept of giving people the opportunity to go on safari.
Even though we live just 500 meters up this hill, we still put the camera on to see what's happening.
Absolutely, we watch it ourselves.
My name is Taylor McCurdy and I work for Eco Training. I love hearing from all of the viewers. However, I particularly enjoy those of you who have been watching for a few years. Your questions are just so advanced and they really get me thinking. If you'd like to ask a question on WildEarth, you need to register on our website. Once you've done that, head to the live safari page and submit your questions below the live feed.
So we found some more birds. These are wattle starlings, which is the same ones we were seeing in the horse paddock, but just nice to see them probably a little bit more stationary. So there is a big difference between the males and the females. The females are just sort of a brown color. They both have a white rump that you can see there on the one on the far left of the screen, and then there's also the males have a bright yellow and black wattle on their heads when they're in breeding plumage. They also eat predominantly insects, fruit, nectar and seeds. And what's interesting about them is that they're colonial, so they also live in colonies, but they breed monogamously. So there's a pair, but they all live together in a colony, and it's just deafening with how many are around at the moment. And this is we see them often following large animals. So giraffe, wildebeest, buffalo, they're looking for, as the animals are disturbing the insects, so they're feeding on those insects. It nearly didn't start. That would have been a bit of a problem. So we'll head along. I think this is the best way to bird when we're live, because the bird's there as soon as you stop. You see, there we go, there's another one. That's a quick look at a dove. Don't move. Looks like a Cape turtle dove. Let's have a look. Yes, it's a Cape turtle dove. So it's a little bit dusty brown. They're normally grey, more grey in colour, but you can see that little black line across the back of the neck, or the cape of the bird. And Cape turtle dove. That's pretty much what their call is. Cape turtle, Cape turtle. Oh, there's a nice male wattled starling to the right. He's on the top with the nice wattle. He shows you the bright yellow. You can see, oh, of course he flew off. Oh, well, he's practically coming all the way around to join the dove. No, he's gone. Sorry that he was there, and now he's gone. Asking the question, how many different species of birds do we have at Tswalu? So our bird list is well over 270, but quite a few of them will be migrants. So coming during the winter season, then we don't see them. They're leaving around March. That'll be the warblers, the cuckoos, some of those. They'll leave. But this year, with also having the rain, we've had very unusual birds. And every now and again, because we've got water holes and we're in this most random place, we find a random bird. We don't know if they've blown in from somewhere, but completely out of distribution range. They'll stop over for a day or two before moving on. We've had a juvenile greater flamingo, which was probably the surprise for me. We've had a western yellow wagtail before, which was quite a surprise. Just a few days ago, we had a grey-hooded kingfisher, which was also a surprise. Brown-hooded kingfisher also arrived. So it just shows if there's food available, they can come in. So there are also certain areas of the reserve where you'll find the far south, we get the buffalo weavers, the red-headed buffalo weaver, but anywhere else we don't get them. Red-billed buffalo weaver, it's not a red-headed. There's a red-headed weaver and a red-billed buffalo weaver. So we get the buffalo weaver down south, but not anywhere else, and also tend to have more hornbills. So you can see there's a nice sand dune. Somebody was asking about the red sand and where you get to see the red sand. So all of those mountains are within Tswalu, and you can see there the red. That's the sort of one of the dunes that is where you see the red sand. So the dunes are not necessarily as vegetated as the dune streets, the sort of flatter areas at the bottom. So that's a nice view of the Kalahari. So we're also in a band known as the Green Kalahari because we get slightly more rain than the sort of true desert where you'd get just red sand. So, sorry, I didn't get the name there, but where does the red color come from? That's a very, very iron-rich soil, which is where the red comes from, so sort of the iron oxides. And all of the soil, the sand that we see is all aeolian, which means wind-blown sand. So it's been blown in. It's not eroded off the mountain ranges. It's been blown in, and you go further north along the same longitude, You go further north up into Namibia, that's where you start seeing the completely red sand dunes with very little vegetation, hardly any grass, just a couple of scattered camel thorn trees. That's up into Namibia. That's getting sort of less than sort of 150, 200 mils of rain a year. So it's an area that gets less rain, where you'll see the red sand dunes all the time, and they're open and exposed. Watch your heads. Every time we go underneath the trees, we've got to watch out for the aerial. Oh, the question was, do we have snow on the top of the mountains, is how I understood it from Star. No, it doesn't snow in the Kalahari. We hardly even get frost, but it doesn't snow on the tops of the mountains. These mountains are, I think the sort of highest one is about 1,600 meters. So, but that's above sea level. So that's not they're relative to where we are down on the ground. They're probably only about a couple of hundred meters up. They're not too bad. It takes a while to walk up them, I'll tell you that much. And very rocky, so lots of loose rocks. So now we get to a junction, which is literally a five-star junction. We have to make a choice. So we're going to pick left today. So we're going to head towards one of our own dams, and we're going to send you across to Steve on the dam cam.
Thanks, Dee. Well, I'm really interested to visit the Kalahari proper one day. I've been into sort of southern Botswana, but I wouldn't really. Parts of it are quite Kalahari-esque, but it definitely lacks what we see there, that beautiful red golden soil. But I know that might not snow there, but it gets very cold in the winter months. It goes straight through the bones. I'm heading to the Orange River in April to go do a canoeing. So I will be driving through that area. I still haven't decided exactly how I'm getting there. Friends I'm going with are coming from the Cape, and I'm going to be finishing up a stint here. So getting all the way across there, it's an enormously long distance. So I think it'll have to be tied in with a bit of a road trip. Who doesn't like a road trip, everybody? I thoroughly enjoy it. Moonbeam, no. I mean, the ecosystem is designed to have rain. The problem comes in when there's interference. So, for example, due to the fact that around the world, wetlands are being disturbed, wetlands are being removed, structures are being built, so roads actually influence the flow of water. Water is supposed to be slowly soaked into the ground, where around the world historically, if you look at Europe, much of Europe was designed to sort of channel and move the water away as quickly as possible. And what it does is essentially the quicker you move water to the ocean, the less you have available in the ground. So it's very important for vegetation to absorb, to slow down. And we spoke about earlier about pioneers. Their job is to sort of turn the soil back into sort of an area that vegetation occurs, and having vegetative areas that slow water down cause the water to be absorbed. But overgrazing is a reality. Bad management practices with regards to agriculture, and maybe some bad farming practices where overgrazing has occurred, that can lead to enormous amounts of erosion. And the soil that has taken eons to be created, I mean, that Aeolian sort of dune bed that Deirdre was talking about didn't happen over a couple of years, everybody. That happened before there was even vegetation on this planet. So think about that from a time frame. And now much of the soil around the world, you just have to have a look at aerial photographs of countries or islands like Madagascar due to interesting changes in the ecology there due to the palm oil industry, and have a look at aerial photographs and see the amount of soil that is entering into the ocean because of rain, which is a natural system, natural part of the process. Rain is water coming from the oceans into the sky and back again. The whole water cycle has been around since the beginning of time. And vegetation, that rain has also shaped the planet as we know it. But now the vegetation that's covered the planet everywhere, in places where mismanagement has taken place, you're seeing enormous amounts of soil that took eons to be created, just disappearing into the ocean. So yes, of course, high amounts of rainfall can be destructive to the ecosystem if it's not in a natural state. But the animals will get by, the vegetation here will get by. The concerns we have is driving around on roads, because again there's an area where water gets channeled, water flows the quickest direction it can, always moves the easiest direction. So that's why we're not out at the moment. Allow the roads to sort of soak it in a bit. We don't want to be needlessly driving around and causing any damage. Allow the water to filter in and soak in. But at the moment, the concern is the amount of water we've had. The seep lines and the groundwater table is very high. So everything that's falling now, although it is still very low, we've had another 7 mils of rain since we started the show. It has got nowhere to go. So it's got to run off, and runoff can be devastating to a landscape if there's no vegetation holding that soil together. So erosion is a real thing. It's not a unnatural occurrence, erosion. Erosion is very, very natural, but due to human influence around the world, we're seeing many of these processes sped up. So the movement of sediment from one place to another, that is what erosion is. Those sand dunes that were blown in by wind that Deirdre is talking about, that is called erosion through wind, the movement of sediment from one place to another. Your beaches, the water comes onto the beach from the ocean, from the rivers, it's moving up and down the beach. That's very, very mobile. That is erosion. Our animals moving around in the sediment here, picking up soil and mud on their hooves and carrying it away. It's also erosion. So it's all a very natural part and parcel of the system. But unfortunately, due to practices around the world, big events like this, especially in places like Mozambique, where a lot of the people are living below what we would call the high water mark or the flood line, causes enormous amounts of sort of homelessness and damage to people and to structures. So we're just hoping, and we're sending our hearts out again to the people living in these areas that are potentially going to be affected once again, that haven't even recovered from the last cyclone. Prayers and thoughts are with them. Rockwild, it really depends. I mean, sand is a very, very fine, or should I say coarse-grained type of substance. We talk about sand as being like the final product of sediment. So on the beaches you get sand, but there's many soil types, and sand is just a part of soil. Just like clay. Clay is also part of soil. You're not necessarily looking at it as an individual piece. But there are many muds around the world that people use, many soil around the world that animals will eat that are rich in iron, rich in sort of calcium, limestone, for example, when it breaks down, and there's lots of calcium in there. So I don't know many people that eat earth, but there's lots and lots of sort of sediment around the world. There's something known as diatomaceous earth, which is a sediment that's found in many, many places. It's basically these diatoms were sort of very small organisms that occurred in the oceans, and when the oceans sort of dried up, because the oceans were everywhere, and when the oceans deposited a lot of the sediment, there was huge die-offs of this particular type of organism called a diatom, and they formed in these massive, massive areas, and there was this this farmer somewhere in South Africa, and it's all over the place, really. You can get it for your pets and for your animals these days. And there was this farmer who was basically taking his cattle to the slaughterhouse, as many people who farm cattle do. And the slaughterhouse people would always come to him and say, what do you do with your animals? They've got no parasites, they've got no worms, they've got no intestinal issues. And he didn't know what they meant. This was quite a while ago. And he started observing. And on his land, there was this area that the animals used to lie in, roll in, and eat. And he realized that that substance, which is now farmed and harvested, and people can get it, it's the best thing to give your pets. It's the best thing to rub into their fur. It's the best thing to feed them, to actually protect them as well. And it eliminates skin itches and rashes and intestinal parasites and all of that. And it's basically just little particles that just look like little powder that you can very, very easily put into food, and you can buy it at most sort of vets these days. Very, very easily found on the internet. Many, many companies these days. So naturally occurring. It's a sedimentary rock, as I said before, so deposited through the sediment of sort of oceans drying up. Very fine granularly. So essentially the diatomaceous earth is fossilized remains of the diatoms, which are hard-shelled protists, and they're used as a filtration aid. So it uses pesticides, mechanical insecticides, absorbents for liquids, all sorts of animal improvements. So definitely check it out if you're looking for a nice sort of natural organic way to deal with your pets. Kleptoparasite. I've been asked a question there. I'm sorry I didn't get the name of the person who asked. But a kleptoparasite, essentially, what is a klepto? Kleptomaniac is someone who steals things. They can't help stealing. So we can all remember the word klepto. Kleptomaniac is someone who steals and they can't help it. There's a problem. So klepto is to steal, and a kleptoparasite is someone who steals from someone else. So it's a species cross relationship. So whenever we talk about mutualism or commensalism or parasitism, it's a species interrelationship. So I can't be a parasite to you because you're a human being as well, but I could be a parasite to something larger than me. So say I was stealing from another species and it hurt them in a way because I'm stealing their food, Viola, then I would be probably a kleptoparasite. So we normally refer to kleptoparasites, normally spiders. There's a kleptoparasite, the dewdrop spider I spoke about this morning, that's in the web of the golden orb spider. So it's stealing her food. She might not really be affected greatly, just like you with a tick bite. You're not really affected greatly by it. It's a bit of an itch. Doesn't kill you. It's a bit irritating. It's a bit annoying. We don't like it. But it's a cross-species thing. So whenever we talk about symbiosis, everybody, you've got to remember symbiosis is a relationship between two species. Okay, so two impalas can't have a symbiotic relationship, but the oxpecker and the impala have got a symbiotic relationship because the oxpecker benefits the impala. The tick, on the other hand, is a parasite to the impala because it's feeding on the impala's blood, but itself in general doesn't kill the impala, but it does have the potential to transfer disease that can kill the impala. So the parasite is generally smaller and lives off of the host, benefits from the host without the intention of killing it. We then go a step further and talk about a parasitoid, which is essentially many wasps are parasitoids, where they physically catch an organism like a caterpillar or something like that, and they inject it to put in a coma, and then they lay it in a number of its eggs. So it leaves it alive. Those eggs will hatch and feed off of those caterpillars or the spiders, whatever it is that wasp has decided to catch. And that parasitoid is something that is then going to eat that organism alive. So very different from parasite. Parasitoid has the intention of killing. So kleptoparasite is just stealing a few snacks here and there. They don't like it. They don't like it at all, but they definitely will survive the onslaught. But anyway, we're going to carry on here. Please keep sending through your wonderful questions while we send you over to DJ and some bat-eared foxes.
So they look like they've had a rough night. 3 bat-eared foxes there outside their den, but they are passed out. So they've just, there hasn't been too much sun today, but they'll start thinking about getting moving. We used to get the odd one move every now and again. You just sort of see the ears and they shuffle in position, but yeah, there's one on the left. You can just see like the flat ears, then the one ear sticking up in the middle, and then you're seeing the body on top of that sand of the other ones. They don't make the most... They heard us arrive, they picked their heads up, and now that we've been here for a minute or two, they're like, oh, well, it's only those guys for Safari Live, so we'll just go back to sleep. So Otysion megalotus is their scientific name, and that just refers to the fact that they've got incredibly large ears. Mega, yeah, the mega being big. I think, Bridget, if I understood the question correctly, it's, are they rare? At Tswalu, they're not. At Tswalu, they're relatively common. We see them quite regularly. Oh, there's one moving. One's moving. We can see the face now. Thank you very much for finally looking up. So not rare at Tswalu and not rare in some places, but not found everywhere across southern Africa. They do tend to like the drier regions. Oh, that was a good yawn. So about 80% of the diet consists of termites, but insects mostly. Oh, there we go. Now suddenly we've got a little bit more movement. Then that's the third one. Great. So most of them have had their pups. That one actually looks a little bit smaller. They may well be the pups from this last season. So Tandeka is asking how big are they in comparison to other fox species. So they're actually relatively small. A jackal would be taller. They're very hairy. The poor little bat-eared fox is very, very hairy because of moving around a lot in the evening time when it's a lot cooler. But a jackal will be taller and longer. Cape fox more slight, so whereas a bat-eared fox tends to have short legs and be more sort of chunky in size. Not weighing very heavy. They're sort of about 2.5 kilograms. We're going to keep going forward and see if we can get them. No, they've run off now. Now they've decided to probably go off for some early foraging. But it was nice to see them lounging about outside their den, and now they're off to go find some insects. We're not too far from where the Makalas like to go to bed at the moment, where their new burrow system, so maybe if they're on the southern end we can see them. G is asking, do they pair for life? Yes, the bat-eared fox are monogamous, so they will pair for life, but if something happens to one of those pairs, they will find a replacement partner. So we're nearly there. We just hope that the meerkats have decided to be on the burrow that's closest to the side of the road, because otherwise there's a bit too much vegetation. Oh, I see one, whether it's a meerkat or a squirrel. We can go forward and see. In the areas of the meerkat burrows, there's often lots of squirrels. So, oh, there's some meerkats. We'll go forward and see who's there. I saw them. Here they are. There's some feeding down here. Here we go, right next to the vehicle. There's 6 of the Makalas, close to home, 7 of them, all busy feeding. So such abundance of food at the moment. They're eating really, really well, but it's all important. It's all keep up some fat layers to get them through the winter season. However, having had such a good winter this year, I think they'll do really, really well going into the winter season this year. So, he's digging furiously. They will expend quite a good amount of energy if it is something that's really good to eat. He's after it. It must be trying to dig away from him or get away from him. It's probably a beetle or something like that. But, wow, he really is in there. So Hannah's asking the question, what time would they usually head back into their burrows? So it is now around sunset time. They always want to be back at the burrow before the sun goes down. It allows them time to do some maintenance of the burrows, a little bit of housekeeping. And so typically sort of the last half an hour to 45 minutes before the sun goes down. So they are within 50 to 80 meters of their burrow, so not too far. So once they've decided they're full enough and they're feeding, they'll finished feeding for the day, they'll move to that burrow system. You can still hear they're quite talkative. The one in the front here is one of the sub-adults. It's only about 4 months old, and they're still very vocal. But when pups are foraging with the adults for the first time, they're incredibly vocal because they want the food off the adult, but then it's also a means of telling everybody where they are. So, this is getting sort of the last-minute tasty morsels of the day. So that one is just hoping that there's another one around that's paying attention on sentry duty. Painter Girl says it looks like they're digging to the center of the earth. Certainly, that one was digging with such frenzy. But sometimes those beetles and bugs can move quite quickly away from them, so they are, after they get a nose full of sand. Just a quick tick around to see that he hasn't been left behind. So one of those reasons for that constant little chittering and calling is just to maintain contact. So they're hearing everybody. So if they don't hear anybody for a while, they know that they need to look around to see if they've moved on and it's time to move as a group. They're not having to move too far from the burrows at the moment to find enough food because there just is a sheer abundance of it. So in winter, they're tending to have to move further and further away from the burrows in order to find food. And then they tend to move from burrow system to burrow system more frequently. Oh, he's covered in sand. Yes. Sussex is asking, how do they breathe in the burrow, if that's how I understand it. There will be air. It's all sorts of tunnels, and lots of different tunnels with lots of different entrances. So it's not just one hole and it's closed. It's lots of different entrances and exits. So there will be air in the burrows. That food reward must really be worth it because he's spent a lot of time digging that up. then he looks around, and the others are a little bit further away now, so he's got to be faster before they all leave him behind. Oops. They've got incredibly sharp claws and long claws on those front feet. Oh, time to check around again. That was a quick last-minute check-up as well, just in case there's an aerial predator. The rest are getting a little bit further away from him, so he's gonna bolt soon. He's gonna look up, and they're about 30 or 40 meters away from him already. So they're there in the back of the picture. He's gonna realize that they're leaving without him. Here we go. The realization may be coming right now. He's like, "But wait, guys, I've got such a good one here." Now he's got to decide. Does he carry on digging for what food reward that he thought would be worthwhile there, or does he catch up to the rest of the group? Oh, he's carrying on digging. He's not far from home, so he knows that that's where they're going. So if he does get left behind, he's okay. He'll go always automatically to the closest burrow system. Oh, you see, now he can't see them anymore. Now you can start seeing that panic because they've gone round the bush. He hasn't got visual. There we go. And he ran basically to where he saw them last. So there we go. Meerkats can be pretty quick if they need to be. And there he's found one of his friends. There we go. So, all that effort, and he had to leave his bug behind. And there they go. Oh, sounds like Steve's got something awesome to show you.
Oh, thanks, Dee. How awesome is it to see the change in vegetation and the grass, and a lot of that area, I suppose, is pretty just sandy and exposed in the dry months. But yeah, we do have something to show you. We've got a herd of elephants. Let's come down to drink there. Apart from hippos, are the one animal that I feel seems to enjoy the rain. They don't mind it. They're big bodies. Still cautious though. You see her nose is up. She's trying to smell. What is it? Let me just see. I've got youngsters to tend to. Come and do some feeding. Very relaxed. Lana, it did look like trying to drink the rainwater with its nose. This is a female. Now, you can tell that it's a female by the... she's trying to be aware. A male of this size, first of all, if you look at the eyes and the narrowness of where the tusks are, a male of this size, the tusks would be as broad or as wide as the eyes, or wider. You see how if you draw a figure of 8 around the eyes and then you draw it around the bottom, so the bottom half of the figure of 8 that goes over the tusks should be quite wide if it's a male, or at least square with the top. Females, the bottom stays quite narrow, and the eyes, obviously as she gets older, her head still gets bigger, but she doesn't need the same sort of thickness that you find with a male elephant. So from the front, that's quite a nice, easy way. And then if you look from the side, can you see how the angle of the head is a very sort of angle there? The male is quite rounded as he gets older, where she's very much like a corner on the top of the head there. It's a lot more difficult when they're younger to tell the difference, but there are certain other characteristics that stand out noticeably. Mammary glands in females between the front legs and, well, the obvious appendage when it comes to male elephants. So very varied diet today. She's going for a few forbs. It looks like a little creeper, and now time for some grasses. Tom, I reckon they do sneeze. Here's a young boy. I actually think I've heard one sneeze before. I've definitely had one snore. I used to have one that used to fall asleep outside my tent up in Porphyry, Northern Kruger. And it used to make a really loud snoring sound through that nostril. Imagine how much affects our nose. Can you imagine a nose like that? How much must affect it? I've never actually heard an elephant sneeze, but I think I have. But I wasn't sure. You know, when you sort of hear that and you're like, was that a sneeze? Oh my goodness. Look at that little one. Oh my goodness, isn't that precious? Now again at the back you can see that's a female coming. You see the eyes are wider than the tusks. Very easy to see, isn't it? When they reach a certain size, males will be square, and as they get bigger that just gets wider and wider. That for me is the easiest way to tell, and it's important if you are out in the bush to be able to identify male versus female quite quickly, because we used to do lots of trails guide training, and it's very important as a trails guide to be able to identify immediately, is it a female or is it a male? Because breeding herds is a very different approach to breeding herds of elephant on foot as there are to males. And if it's a male, things are just slightly different. If it's a female, obviously because they got babies, they can be a little bit more temperamental. You just need to approach things very, very differently. They also react from a much further distance than males do. Males are bulletproof, really. Nothing bothers a big male elephant. You see how she keeps checking? Even though they're at the water, she keeps checking because she's got youngsters. An animal of her size has got nothing to concern her directly, but she's got youngsters to look after. So a big male elephant, he's not concerned with anything at all. So they don't really pay too much attention to their surroundings. They just carry on with the day. And so sometimes you can actually get a little bit closer to them. That's wonderful, isn't it? Oh, there's the baby again at the back. She's so small. So small. The elephant energy is strong today.
It is fantastic seeing you all again. Those who haven't met me, my name is Dylan, in what is undoubtedly a very, very, very green Kalahari from what we were looking at a couple of months ago. We will be doing our very first fireside chat for WildEarth. So if you can join us on the 13th at about 7:30 after game drive, it would be an absolute pleasure. We'll see you there.
Sign up to become an explorer and join them by the fire straight after the sunset safari.
The reason why we see that wildebeest by himself is because he's a male, or a bull, as we typically would call him. And what he does is that he marks and defends an area. Essentially, he is looking for the ultimate piece of land, or prime property. Needs to have good grazing, needs to have a water source close by. And not too far away from here, there's a sickle bush thicket that would provide just enough shelter from the wind and the rain.
My name is Lauren, and I'm currently working in Djuma Private Game Reserve here in South Africa. I love answering your questions during the live safaris. It's my favorite part. It feels like you're on the vehicle with me, and I'm able to teach you exactly what you want to know. If you want to ask a question on WildEarth, then you need to register on our website. Once registered, you must go to the live safari page and ask your question below the live feed.
The croc is still holding another one there. It's holding from the hindquarters. I would really want. The wildebeest cross is trying. The croc is holding the tail. It's holding tight. Oh no. Goodness me. Lucky, lucky wildebeest. You have another day to live.
Expect the unexpected here on WildEarth daily.
There's a grounding earthiness to this place that we feel in our ancestors. It's a place where, believe it or not, we evolved as a human species, and anyone who's come to Africa will understand that. The connectivity that the continent has to the person and to people's souls is next level. I'm thoroughly looking forward to taking you on your next adventure when we explore all the small and big things.
Catch up with the guides daily here on WildEarth.
So no big mammals at the waterhole at this stage, but we've got Mum and all her Egyptian geese goslings. There's still 9 of them, so not too bad. I think she started with 9 and she still has 9. So they're probably just about a month old. And she would have either nested most of the time away from the water. It can be quite away from the water and even in a hole in a tree, or for them possibly on top of a sociable weaver's nest, and then those chicks fall out of that nest onto the ground, and then she'll bring them across the water, and that they all do sort of in their first day of life. They have to take the plunge from wherever their nest is down onto the ground and then walk through all the perils and get to the waterhole, and then they will do better, but always a bit of a challenge. So you're seeing the one adult there in amongst all the goslings. And then we've got other birds. We've got blacksmith lapwing on the edge there that a couple of months ago we were watching and waiting in anticipation for the 4 eggs to hatch, and it seems like only 2 of the chicks have survived. That's one of the adults. The chicks were literally behind, but of course they've moved on. Oh, no, they're gone. Yeah, they're busy moving around on the edge, feeding. And there's another Egyptian goose in the frame on the left. And then in the background, making the biggest racket, is all the wattled starlings. They are literally just covering all the trees. Amy is asking, do they fall asleep in the watering hole? I haven't seen them sleep on the water. When I've seen Egyptian geese sleep, they tend to be on the edge of the water, and that would be when they were sleeping. I think that they'd potentially be vulnerable if they were sleeping on the water, and maybe if they forget to paddle, they might sink. So I think with the geese, with the Egyptian geese, they prefer to sleep on the edge of the water, outside of the water. And sometimes they'll sleep with their neck and their head tucked in underneath their wing. There was a little grebe earlier, or known as a dab chick, depending on which bird books you open, but he ducked under the water and he's gone. So we're going to send you to Steve, whose Ellies are still at the watering hole.
Well, elephants are at the watering hole, and I am truly blessed, everybody. Lauren has just arrived with a steaming cup of hot chocolate. Well, life is beautiful. Elephants, baby elephants. Thanks, Lauren.
You're welcome.
Stay dry. It's still pouring down outside, everybody, as you can see on the dam cam there. And I've got a question for Deirdre, because it's something that we got asked about 1,000 times. last couple of years. So Deirdre, do you think Egyptian geese are good parents? Because we've had some mixed opinions, we've had some mixed answers, because we've had some pairs of Egyptian geese that have been great parents, and as you know, we've had others that have not been. The Bivasuk Dam Egyptian geese pair, notoriously not that good, but yet the one at Chitwas, oh, here comes the little one again, has been a lot better. So everybody, we talk about breeding herds of elephants, and this is a family group. You can actually see the age differences, and there would be more than one female breeding here. There were the two big females, and then the offspring. That big one at the back is a young boy. The sexes of these four here is hard for me to tell you, but all five of them consecutively in this herd. So this one here, the big lady, could even be a grandmother. It's hard to say, but a beautiful close-knit family group. And once this group gets a bit bigger, or should I say a lot of these youngsters become mature and they start having their own offspring, the herd will start to split and fragment into sort of smaller feeding groups like this one. But then in times of sort of abundance, or at certain times of year, you'll find those groups coming back together again. And you see these, there's a little bit of play happening there, and you see the affection as old matriarchs meet maybe sisters or maybe daughters of times gone by, and slowly but surely they move off again. But it is always a very, very beautiful thing to see large herds of elephant coming together. I've seen elephant herds in the hundreds before in Botswana. I think 150, 200 elephants coming together at a watering hole. All the youngsters playing with each other, exploring, pushing each other, shoving each other, and then mum eventually moving back off as they move in the direction they came from. I'm not sure I understood that question from Kelly. Maybe you can try again. If elephants could sweat, would it help with the wrinkles? I'm not sure sweating has got anything to do with the wrinkles on skin. I don't think our sweat has got any hydrating force for us. Sweating is purely a means of cooling down. I've never gone and said to myself, I'm having a really good moisturizing day today while I sweat in the sun. The sweating is for cooling, and the elephants have their own means of cooling with the ear flapping. And the purpose of the skin and the wrinkles is to increase the surface area. So the larger the surface area, the longer it takes to heat up, and the longer it also takes to cool down. So it means that they've got a much lower nutrient requirement than that of a smaller animal. Even in this herd here, from the smallest to the biggest, has got a different nutrient requirement. The smallest animal in the herd has got a much larger surface area to volume ratio, and so they have to basically have high nutrients, very, very high diet. It's why breeding herds of elephant have to move in areas of good feeding, because they've got youngsters that require the feeding, good nutrients. The females themselves don't necessarily need that quality. They could feed on more bulk like the bulls do, but they have to make decisions based on the herd. And bulls themselves, they don't have those worries or concerns, so they can go wherever they want to, wherever there's bulk, and just stuff their faces all day long, and they'll be fine. But this female's life is determined, or basically revolves around providing for her herd, as many of you out there probably have the same role in your family, and you know what I mean, how important it is. There we go. To do everything you can for them, for the benefit of your youngsters. Oh, isn't it wonderful? What a wonderful scene on the dam cam this afternoon with this herd of elephant. From a pretty quiet start. Lucy, it's probably a form of dominance, a form of the male having to prove himself. The females selectively choose the older male due to his strength and size, and they basically want big, strong elephants that have survived the rigors of life and have survived and basically pass on their genetic traits. If you go to areas where elephant populations are maybe a little bit unnatural, younger elephants can most certainly mate. It's just they're not in these natural populations. They don't get the opportunity to mate because the bigger bulls dominate in that regard. So like Deirdre was talking about before, about birds being in breeding plumage and raptors, that raptor has to earn its stripes. It has to have learned the ways of surviving, and it has to basically be able to provide for its youngsters when it comes to large birds. But elephants, they want the biggest and strongest genetics to move forward, and so they actually choose the males due to size, due to strength, and due to the capacity of their must. But it doesn't mean that younger bulls can't mate. It just means that the females don't really allow them to. So it's also a choice. Every now and again, younger bulls do get the opportunity. They're able to go into must in periods when the other bulls are not around, and they can mate, but generally not earlier than late 20s, early 30s. And populations of elephants want to grow, so the females come into breeding readiness much earlier, as early as 9. They don't really need to provide dominance or anything like that. They learn, they stay in the herd, they learn everything they need to learn from their mothers, and it's the bull's genetics that will be mixed with hers to move forward. Okay, well, we're going to stay with the elephants who are playing really nicely on the dam cam. We'll send you back to Deirdre, who's got something interesting to show you.
So apparently we're playing question ping pong, and Steve has asked me what I think of Egyptian geese's parents. Well, I think for her to still have 9 goslings is pretty impressive, and they actually, I think, have a much higher success rate than a lot of others because they are very aggressive birds. So I'd say to Steve, they are good parents. But what I have here is a lovely little sort of climber creeper. It's taken over the top of the poor raisin bush. It's known as a balsam pear. So I found a piece on the ground here. I'm going to hold up the pear so you can see it, because there's all sorts in there. And this is not ripe yet. When it's nice and orange, it's ripe, and I can see one there. And apparently it bursts open once it's been picked, so we're definitely going to try that. I have to see it burst open on live TV. And also, you just see these nice little... they almost look like coils, so that will just wind itself out and wrap itself around the branch, and that's how they spread. These are just sort of very springy coils, and that's all over the place. Beautiful little yellow flowers, but we're going to, without getting stuck in the tree, luckily this isn't a thorn tree, so this balsam pear is now ripe. It looks almost ripe. So let's see if it's willing to burst open once we've picked it. Oh, maybe not. It didn't burst open, but I'm going to bring it a little bit closer. It did pop a little bit. But these seeds, I don't want to come too close. So beautiful red seeds. The seeds are edible. I know if this was Steve... Here's the question back to Steve, is would he eat a balsam pear? There's the question back to Steve. So really, really nice, bright red seeds that are supposedly edible. And the medicinal uses for this is sort of bites, burns, frostbite, diabetes. So for the local people, this would have had quite a lot of uses. I'm just trying to feel if this seed's quite hard, actually. Messy. Oh, there we go. I'm going to distribute a balsam pear for future. Burst open. Now my hands are all nice and sticky. That probably wasn't the smartest thing to do. Now I've got to wash my hands. I need to go and find a sheep's thorn that I can use as a... Yeah, Sarah is saying the seeds look like red beans. They do. And when something is bright red like that, it's red for a purpose. It's red because it wants to attract attention so that whether it's birds or monkeys or humans, pick it and eat it, and then so in their system carry it through. So you might find sometimes those seeds, there's like a fleshy reward on the outside, and the seed remains intact, but then that passes through the system of an animal and it gets dropped off somewhere else, and then that seed germinates from there. So that's my question to Steve, is would he eat a balsam pear? There's others that almost look very similar called sour plums. They're not that great. A lot of the viewers are saying that they would eat it. Okay, I'm glad you trust me. Just because it says edible in the book, I'm glad that you trust that. But I'm not that adventurous, and now I've thrown them all on the ground, so I can't even sort of dare myself to try, because all I'm going to get in my mouth is lots of sand. So, not today. But fortunately, they are flowering around all over the place, so maybe I'll ask our local trackers if any of them eat it, and if they eat it and they show me that they eat it, then maybe I'll try. But sometimes if your system is actually not used to eating these kinds of things, you can land up being very sick. Mark is asking how many edible wild fruits we have in the Kalahari. Wow, now I have to think off the top of my head. So you can eat the balsam pear, you can eat the wild cucumber, you can also eat the Tsama melon, and there is the boskia tree, the shepherd's tree. You can eat the fruit off that. And then there isn't anything else. We don't get marula trees or anything like that. So nothing large fruiting trees like the loaf. We get the Namakwa fig. You'd probably be able to eat those figs, although they're not the classic figs that you would think with figs and cheese, or cheese and wine and figs. They don't look the same. They're tiny little balls on the fig tree, so not quite the same shape of a fig that you would buy in a supermarket at all. They just generally tend to be small little round balls. You could eat those. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And I know it's not really a fruit, but you can eat, well, it is. It's a fungal fruiting body. You can eat the Kalahari truffle. We've seen one or two recently. It has to have a specific volume of rain and a specific amount of lightning and be in a set soil type at a set time of the year. So the Kalahari truffles are quite picky, but and that's a sort of a mushroom fruiting body, so you can eat those. They sold at a premium, and even there's a local gin that uses them, infuses the Kalahari truffle taste into a local gin. So we pretty much continue looking for anything else to eat or anything else that's flying around or moving. We'll send you back to Steve.
Well, thanks, Dee. Everybody out there knows the answer to Deirdre's question, don't they? Deirdre wants to know would I eat it. Deirdre obviously doesn't know me well enough. It's been a long time since we worked together. We all know that I eat everything, everybody, don't I? First of all, the redness would be something I'd have to think about. I'd look for the milky latex on the fruit itself. Then I'd probably test the fruits on my skin. And then I'd probably taste one on the tip of my tongue to test for the bitterness. And apparently it's also known as the bitter apple or the bitter cucumber. And there are diarrhea sort of side effects. I've been trying to find it online. I'm not sure if I found the same one, but apparently ingestion of it can cause a fair amount of vomiting and a fair amount of purging. So not sure if it is the exact same plant, but trying to find it. It's always important to test these things, everybody. Don't read something in a book and immediately go and eat it. We've all seen that movie Into the Wild, whereby he found a plant and he ended up eating it, and it happened to be the exact opposite of the plant he needed to eat, and it was poisonous, and it caused him to lose a lot of weight, and he ended up starving to death. So there are many ways of testing poisonous plants. Milky latex is a good test. Trying it on the skin. If it burns the skin, well, clearly it's not a good idea. And if it's bitter, generally it's a good idea to leave it alone. And if you pass all of those tests, then eat a little bit of it at a time and see how it responds to your body. If monkeys eat it, it's probably a good chance that you'll be able to eat it as well. But bear in mind, you don't have the same stomach digestive capacity at this time that they do. So be aware, and I definitely would give it a try. But with vomiting and purging as one of the, I don't think it's the same tree, but interesting. It's good to try those things. Good to have a look in nature what there is to eat. There's plenty of things out here to eat, as we all know. We talk about it regularly. And the elephants, they teach each other what to eat. I'm not sure, Kat. I quite like all the fruits out here that I've had. Marulas are delicious, a bit sour at times. The false marulas are delicious as well. They are tiny little mangoes. The white berry bush are delicious. The sour plum, if they're not ripe, can be very sour, but are very tasty when are ripe. The milkberry, it's got a very sort of milkshaky sort of taste. So I haven't yet come across a wild fruit here that tastes horrible. A lot of the decoctions and things that I make have a bit of a taste to them. But all of the things I try, everybody, come with a disclaimer. Don't try this at home. Looks like our elephant herd has decided they want to go into the Mwati now. Down below the river, below the dam wall itself. Given us such a splendid show, haven't they? Daniel, I mean, it depends at what level the trunk is removed off of an elephant. You see, the elephant's trunk is its nose, so it requires its nose for breathing. They are able to put their mouth into the water to drink, so they can drink without a trunk, although it's a bit awkward, or they just walk straight into the water and drink. But the most important element to the trunk as well is the feeding that it provides. I've seen a number of elephants that have had trunks that have been damaged or injured or cut to a certain degree, and they've managed to do quite well. But obviously they're a little bit handicapped, but they still seem to get by. But to what degree would the trunk be missing? I mean, the animal itself has evolved a very long way to get this very long nose, so it's obviously important. But the nose is the lip. It's basically an elongation of the top lip with the nostrils. So it's a very, very important communication device, breathing device, feeding device. They touch, they feel. There'd be an enormous amount missing if it didn't have a trunk. But I think there's definitely survivability potential. But it depends at what degree that trunk is removed. I think it would look like a rather strange animal, wouldn't it? The elephant without a trunk. Just be this big pair of nostrils. Okay, well, they're down in the drainage line good and proper now, so there's really not much in the way of a view there. So let me zoom out and have a little look around and see what else. It seems like the hippos or something's moving in the water here. Something is causing some ripples. Still some raindrops falling. It doesn't seem to be as bad as before, but the roads have still accumulated an enormous amount of rain. We've had almost 20 mils now, so 10 mils or 13 mils since starting the show. With a 99% chance of precipitation. I think that is pretty accurate.
Hi, I'm Sue. I'm from South Africa and I'm the incredibly lucky winner of the Tswalu competition. Tswalu has so much to offer, but we're really looking forward to the game viewing options, as going out with a personal guide who has so much knowledge will just be exceptional. Motsi Lodge looks absolutely amazing and we're so looking forward to spending time there. It really is out of this world. I only registered as an explorer towards the end of January, so when the email arrived stating that I was the winner, it took me totally by surprise. I'd just like to thank WildEarth and Tswalu for this most incredible prize. It really is a dream come true.
WildEarth Explorers, it's in your nature.
Our bodies are made up of about 60% water, which means that in a very short space of time, you can dehydrate completely. A relatively efficient way of collecting water early in the morning is to take an absorbent material like a sock and to walk through the grass, absorbing the condensed dewdrops on the grass. Once the material is saturated, you can then squeeze it out into a container, or you can suck it out directly into your mouth.
My name is Steve, and one of my favorite things at WildEarth is getting questions from you. The type of questions that I really like are those ones that really help us to unpack and understand and really integrate the ecological knowledge and fully appreciate the importance that animals such as these Cape buffalo bring to the ecosystem. If you want to ask a question on WildEarth, you're going to have to register on the website, but once registered, just head on over to the live safari page and enter your question under the live feed. Hello, Mama. Just checking us out, everybody. There's no aggression here. Very relaxed. A herd of elephants moving around your car like that. It's truly, truly magical.
Tune into WildEarth every single day. It's in your nature.
So we're just stumbling down one of our dune streets. So every dune street is slightly different as we go further out to the west, so the vegetation changes quite a bit. This one's got quite a lot of sour grass, mostly camel thorns, which is the bigger trees that we're seeing as we drive past, and then the short, more dense bushes are the black thorns with those nasty little hooked thorns that certainly stop you in your tracks if you encounter one of those, or if you happen to walk past one of those. And then you'll see also the odd slightly lighter, almost blue-grey tree. Those are the grey camel thorns. Liam is asking, if I had an animal superpower, what would it be? I think I would like to have the ability to fly. I think that would be really awesome. I think being like an eagle and being able to go anywhere, but maybe a migratory one, because then you can travel. You can build up frequent flyer miles. You can get to and from places. I'd probably choose to be an eagle and be able to fly. But then you start thinking, now you're thinking, wow, would you like nocturnal vision? That would be another one that would be like a little superpower. But then how do you turn that off when you don't want to see what's going on around you? That would be a challenge. What other superpowers could we think of? Morgan, what would your superpower be? If you had to be an animal with a superpower, what would you choose? No, but I don't know. It's not a good enough answer. I even caught Morgan by surprise with that question. Like, not even. What other superpowers would animals have? Ooh, the ones that can do like the snakes and the reptiles that can do like thermo imaging. That would be pretty cool when they can sort of sense with those pit sensors. The heat signatures of animals. I think that would be quite a cool superpower. And the viewers, what would their superpower? What superpower would they choose? That'd be an interesting one to pass back to you. Now I probably wish I had the superpower to find an animal. Just and see what would pop out. These dune streets can be very long. We're always looking for Gemsbok or eland, red hartebeest. Jenny's asking the question, do we see hummingbirds, or are there any hummingbirds on the areas that we drive? There are no hummingbirds in southern Africa, but the closest thing to a hummingbird would probably be a sunbird. So we get quite a few of those different species. We did try and put one on the air earlier, but it flew off just as we got there. So I can show you a picture of what our sunbirds look like. Maybe I should rather stop the vehicle, otherwise I don't have a superpower to drive and not crash the car and try and find it in the book. And then the best always when reading a book is to go to the index to get to the correct page quickly instead of trying to page through the whole book. So there we go. There's some of the sunbirds. So I'll show you that page. Which looks very similar to a hummingbird, but they're not necessarily. The hummingbirds are much smaller than these on average, so quite pretty, quite a wide variety of them. But the hummingbirds are actually quite interesting. They've got such a they have to have like a nectar reward because their heartbeat is so fast and their metabolism is so fast that they literally have to be feeding almost all the time to maintain that. So that's why they're sort of so busy all the time, is because they've got to maintain that energy levels, and that's why they're also looking for a very sugary meal. That's the third page of sunbirds. I don't think that there's a fourth page. I can just double check. Yes, there is actually. So all the different kinds of sunbirds that you get. This one is one that you find down in the Western Cape. It's a really, really long tail called a Cape sugarbird, and they feed on the proteas. 5 pages of sunbirds, so got lots of choice. But there are also quite a number of different hummingbird species, but none in southern Africa. So just put the lid back on the box of tricks. So Daniel's answer to my superpower is that he'd like to have super hearing. Yeah. That is an awesome one. Then you'd almost be partly like a bat-eared fox, because I think they're in the superpower of super hearing with ears that large. So hopefully it doesn't mean that your ears have to grow as large as a bat-eared fox in order to have that superpower. That wouldn't be that great. says, would like to have the superpower of regenerating limbs like a crab. Yeah, that's a different one. Even starfish. Starfish are able to do the same, that they can regenerate a limb. So all these animals and birds and insects out here have to have incredible senses. Jacqueline is saying infrared eyesight. That's a good one, yeah. So normally the WildEarth, sort of towards the last half an hour of the show, some of the other properties are going into IR, which is the infrared camera. So ability to see. I certainly wouldn't trip over things in my house if I had IR in the dark. When you think, oh, well, I know the way, and then you stub your toe on something, and that's because you don't have IR. Rabbit, I like your sense of humor. You want to have the Jacobson's organ so that you can phlegm and grimace. Yeah, that's a different one. For sure. Oh, we have a wildebeest. We have a wildebeest. Let me go back. Hopefully he doesn't run away in that time frame. There we go. And he's actually standing out in the open. No, don't run away. He's thinking about it. I can see he's thinking about moving off. Ah, no. And there he runs away. So he's just giving you a glimpse of what sometimes happens behind the scenes when all the other guides on the show are trying to frame up something, and then they say, yes, we'll come to you with your animal, and you're like, oh, he just left. He's just done exactly what happens to us sometimes, where you think, this is perfect, but the animal doesn't think so and just disappears. We're going to send you back to Steve and see what's at the dam now.
Yes, indeed. Well, we know that very well, don't we? Trying to get animals on frame. So my superpower is always, I thought, is to fly. I think flying would just be something quite special. I actually had a really interesting dream the other night where I was in a hot air balloon, but a hot air balloon with a difference. I was this really low down rope chair hanging from the hot air balloon, and I couldn't open my eyes. I don't know what to make of the dream. It was quite an interesting one, being very, very high in the sky in a hot air balloon with my eyes sealed shut. There was no flying there. It was more like holding on and cringing. So I have jumped out of an airplane, everybody, and I don't have much of a fear of heights anymore, but I think the dream might be telling me something. But I think flying, we had the saddle-billed stork the other day at the dam, who just stood there, and the wind suddenly emerged like these hardy-dars. Yeah, the wind suddenly emerged from the south or the east, and it just lifted its wings, and it just angled into the wind, and it just took off. I think that would just be glorious. I think that would be so much fun. Even these fellows who don't seem to have the best flight, because they're quite a cumbersome bird. You know, they've evolved a life to feed on the ground, to walk around on the ground, where they benefit by feeding on obviously the insects that are pushed out from, obviously they're able to access the insects and worms. There's a little bit of attention seeking on the left there. My new spirit bird animal, everybody, the hardy-dar ibis. They look like a couple of youngsters there. That one's begging, the one in the middle on the left, going, give me, give me, give me. You can see it's not quite fully grown. I thought it was giving the other one attention, but I think it's more of a give me something to eat story. That's very interesting. You can almost see that the neck is not fully developed. The neck and head, the beak isn't very long. Give me, give me. So even the hardy-dar, that doesn't have, in my opinion, the best flight ability still is able to cruise the sky. And like me in my hot air balloon the other night, they're shouting when they fly, because I've always been told the joke, the reason they make the noise that they make is because they're afraid of heights. I'll try and play it for you, because I do have my wonderful app here. So if you've never heard a ha-de-da before, everybody, be prepared to have a little listen. They do that when they're flying normally, but they'd also do it while perched. It's being very, very nuisancey, isn't it? Give me, Mom, give me. That is very cool to see. Mandy, dead trees, some of the wood is very, very hard and very heavy, and so it takes a very long time for it to decompose. Some woods are much softer and much easily decomposed and breaking down. Many of the fever trees, when you find a fever tree that's been pushed over, they disappear very quickly. But a leadwood can stand for, some people say, over 100 years. So it's quite important, these very hard woods, as they obviously are perfect perches for birds around watering holes, but they also provide sort of holes and cavities, and there's many insects eating the wood. He's very pesty, isn't he? Many insects eat the wood inside, and they provide food for many organisms, birds and mammal alike. And so the tree themselves are actually breeding grounds for many birds and for many insects. So if every tree that was created just disintegrated within moments of its death, we wouldn't get what we call habitat trees. And I can, off the top of my head, list 29 different birds, just off the top of my head, that are used trees here in South Africa for breeding, just here in the Kruger Park. So that's just 29 out of many, and there's probably more that I could look for. Don't forget the tree squirrel, don't forget genets. There's many, many birds that will hide in holes and cavities in trees. And don't forget all the insect life, and all the way down to the microorganism content that you don't always see. And the tree also, when it falls over, provides shade, provides wood, provides organic material, which is slowly but surely decomposed back into the soil. Trees, after all, are a carbon sink. I've heard the term carbon credits. Many people, actually businesses, are planting trees so as to offset some carbon emissions they might be putting out. Trees absorb CO2 from the atmosphere and give off oxygen. So that CO2 is then going into the plant, and the carbon is used to basically hold the plant together and to make the plant more solid and bigger. And then it gives off oxygen. So it takes in carbon dioxide and it gives off oxygen, which is a phenomenal ability. And that carbon, there you go, is released via fire, or it's slowly released into the soil. So charcoal, if any of you have ever had a fire before and you see that black charcoal afterwards, that's essentially straight direct carbon. And then carbon that's burnt off is again released in the form of CO2. So trees are very important. Sorry about the focus there, everybody. Trees are very important carbon sinks around the world. That's why the rainforests, not only are they important for their carbon sinking, but their creation of oxygen is so important. And as all of you know, every breath that you take is important to your survival and requires oxygen. And without the oxygen, well, none of this would happen, would it? None of this would happen. Very philosophical, how I can go from a ha-de-da to a tree to every breath you take. It almost sounds like a song about to start there. We won't break out into song this afternoon, everybody. But just remember, every time you take a breath, that came from somewhere. Some ecological process was formulated to make sure that that oxygen was there for you. You never fear your next breath. You never think about where your next breath is coming from. But yet with the world and what's going on today, maybe we should be considering what's going on in the world and what people are doing to the planet, and start maybe thinking hard about what exactly is going on and what can we do about it. Because if we have to start thinking about where that next breath is going to come from, think about that for reality. Very, very, very worrying. At the moment, everything seems to be okay. But before it's too late, the rainforests are the lungs of the world, everybody. The lungs. I think it's nearly time for me to go into IR. The camera's really struggling to focus on anything. Lisa, there's a few elements. Some people try and put some wire around the tree to prevent the tusks from going in. Some people have put lots of sharp stones and rocks around trees. But essentially, it's difficult because elephants are very powerful animals and they're able to break these things. They're able to push over trees as well. It's not just the ring barking that's a problem. It's the actual damage and the breaking of the trees sometimes. But it's a natural process. Like this big old tree over here. That's been standing there for some time. Isn't it beautiful? Habitat tree of note. And so the elephants create these habitats. They don't necessarily kill the tree. The tree can die through their activity, same as porcupines can also kill trees eventually over time. Lightning can as well. But the natural process of elephants out here in the environment is an important one. Elephants are here as an ecosystem engineer, as a keystone species, meaning if we remove them, the ecosystem will collapse. They are required to be here. But as with anything, there's always a carrying capacity with regards to the numbers. And although our park seems to be enormous, we still need more space. We still need more space for the elephants to move around. There's still plenty of trees, but there's impact specifically happening to certain types of trees that is of concern to many scientists. We actually have an increasing number of trees. Bush encroachment around the world is increasing due to the increases of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It's a natural process. The trees are increasing in volume because of the increased carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So more carbon is being sunk in. So you're actually seeing an increase in it as well, naturally. And so we're not seeing a decrease in tree numbers, but we're seeing impact to specific types of trees. And one of those notably is the knobthorn. And the knobthorn tree is a tree that many predatory birds, raptors, vultures, and the like choose to nest in. And if you're seeing a loss in a particular type of tree, then you're seeing an impact to a particular species, knock-on effect down the road. So there's still lots of research going into those sorts of things, but there's definitely seeing an impact in nesting and breeding sites in these areas due to a loss in preferred habitat trees for breeding.
It is fantastic seeing you all again. Those who haven't met me, my name is Dylan, in what is undoubtedly a very, very, very green Kalahari from what we were looking at a couple of months ago. We will be doing our very first fireside chat for WildEarth. So if you can join us on the 13th at about 7:30 after game drive, it would be an absolute pleasure. We'll see you there.
Sign up to become an explorer and join them by the fire straight after the sunset safari.
Oh, my dear. I do find you most attractive when you're covered in bird lice. Oh, Charles, I love it when you peck at my head and clean the bird lice off me. Let me say hello to Barry here. Hello, Barry. I'm just going to examine you for some bird lice. Charles. I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. No. All right. I shall look for bird life for myself then.
Hi, my name is Tristan Dix, and I am a guide here at Djuma Private Game Reserve for WildEarth. We love connecting you to the African bush, and we always look forward to all of your questions. If you want to ask a question on WildEarth, you'll need to register on the website. Once registered, go to our live safari page and submit a question below the live feed. Catch up with me on WildEarth.
Something very, very interesting. I didn't plan this, but this is a scene rarely seen. This is what we call a journey of giraffe. So beautiful.
Tune into WildEarth every single day. It's in your nature.
Africa is very special, and when you come down here, even when you're watching through our camera, the landscapes change from desert to bushveld to up in the Masai Mara where there's grassland. That means that the biodiversity changes as we move along Africa. And what I love most about connecting with you guys is the fact that I get to share these wonderful experiences with thousands of people.
Catch up with the guides daily here on WildEarth.
So we're trying to be very quiet because it's a double-banded sandgrouse, and it's actually stood very still for 3 minutes. Now it's starting to move, but that's a male double-banded sandgrouse. There's normally always two. There's normally a female close by. She's also got similar coloration, that sort of camouflage color, and that's typically what they do. They freeze. He stood there long enough just waiting to see if we were or weren't a threat, or they lie down, they sort of sit down. But he's using the road as a path to move through the bushes, looking for insects or seeds that maybe have, from the vehicles driving over, knocked them onto the roads. But very pretty. You can see that band over the top of the head above the eye, just between the eye and the beak, the double band. So it's one of the 3 different sandgrouse species we get here. We also get the Namakwa sandgrouse and the Burchell's sandgrouse. He seems to be all by himself, which is strange. You normally see 2. Very short little legs. You can see it's almost like a little bit of a pigeon-like shuffle. And the sandgrouse, particularly the males, have a very interesting adaptation in that they've got specially adapted feathers that when they go into the water, they'll soak up water in those belly feathers, and they're able to take that back to the nest, and the chicks can pull at the feathers and get water from that. So it's a very specially adapted, sort of what they call a hydrophobic type of feather that'll absorb moisture. And then they can carry that back, which is also, it's extra weight for them to fly long distance back to the chicks and give them water. Oh, there's an approaching ground beetle at speed. I see that everybody's using the same trail down the road. Andre is asking if all 3 species of sandgrouse are the same height. Yes, they're pretty much all short little legs, so I think the Burchell's is probably slightly bigger, but when I say slightly, maybe a couple of grams. It's not... he just sort of hop, skipped and jumped around the ground beetle, and then he's going to carry on. The ground beetle stopped. That sort of little dark smudge in the screen there is a ground beetle. And the ground beetle's probably going, phew, that was close. And he might start moving shortly. That's probably one of the most cooperative sandgrouse, unless they're drinking water. But then when they drink water, they drink... And that is... Oh, have a good... Another little bird landed in front of him, but I can't see. It looks like a scaly feathered finch that just landed in front of him, but I don't see it very well. It's quite far away already. The zooms on these cameras are amazing, but I literally just get a little brown blob. So I'd go with scaly feathered finch based on size and sort of colours, but can't be sure. So look, we've got potential rain pending over the next day or so if we have a look at the clouds out on our eastern horizon. So that's sort of the mountains in the north, and then it goes out to the east. So everything is sort of thick and dark and covered, sort of overcast, and then you have that spectacular cumulonimbus cloud in the east. It's still catching some rays of sunshine, but I don't think today we're going to see much of a sunset at all. It's pretty much covered over. Maybe some lightning as well. It was relatively warm today, so there may well be some lightning again, but nothing pending at this stage. I didn't get the person, but the question was, which subjects do you study to know so much about everything? Well, that's the one thing with nature, is that there are so many subjects. One of them is weather and climate, to learn about clouds. Another one is, for the evening, is astronomy. Then the most obvious, which we probably spend the most time speaking about on safaris, is the mammals, the animals, the insects, the birds. We do amphibians, you do reptiles. I'm just trying to think of all the different topics. We even did fish as a guide. Myself personally, I did a degree in conservation, so I had a lot more of the ecological background as well. Steve and I were actually both at the same varsity, just apart from each other. We didn't overlap. I think I was ahead of him by a few years, but we did go both to the same college to study conservation, and worked together many years ago. It's probably a good 10 years ago we worked together on the same reserve, where Steve was the ecologist and then a field guide, and I was also a field guide in the Kruger. So, and you never stop learning. I actually forget about the tracking. So learning tracks and track and sign, trailing. You learn a lot about the birds. When you get to the more senior levels, you can start learning about, you have to sort of learn bird calls, and then which birds are in different regions. You've got to know that. Tracks and signs and trailing, there's the trackers and the guides can do getting different levels depending on, they get sort of tested only practically, as to how much they know, and each one of the areas is different. So you can be a really exceptional tracker in one area, but then come to the Kalahari and go, oh my goodness, I've never seen a Gemsbok track or an eland track. So there's always something to learn as soon as you move from one region to the other. Is lots and lots that you can learn. And even insects, that's probably the one thing that they land up discovering more and more of on a yearly basis. There's always ones that haven't been described to science. So knowing insects and putting them in just general categories can always be a challenge as well. I personally do like the birds. I do like the tracks. And even trailing animals, it's almost like a challenge against yourself to see where they've been and to follow them footprint for footprint through the bushes to see if you can catch up with them. Leopard can leave quite challenging tracks sometimes. Even lion, believe it or not. Here, probably one of the hardest ones for the guys to track is actually a pangolin. I was talking about it the other day. Literally little feet that size, and they're tracking them over the sand. At the moment, incredibly difficult. You almost have to know which burrows they like to use to see if there's fresh signs on either end or on the entrance to the burrow to see if there's any fresh tracks. So, one of our really straight roads. It's amazing the contrast red road to the nice green. Elliot's asking, what is my favorite thing about working in Tswalu? Well, I'd have to say that we can go exploring. This place is enormous. So we go exploring, you go to areas. I'm still, almost a year and a half later, finding roads I haven't driven before. That's how large this place is. And especially because you've moved to a different environment, so there's a lot of new things to learn. As soon as you move from one environment to another, you've got to learn new plants, new wildflowers, and everybody's always asking, what's the medicinal use? What's the, when does it flower? What time of the year? So you've got to research all of those things. So I think you have to keep up your knowledge as soon as you move to a different area. For me, I'm normally full-time the safari manager, so I do manage the whole team, so all the guides, all the trackers. Rusty, who some of the viewers know from previous, he's at the stables, he's at the equestrian centre, so I manage that as well. So yeah, I get a lot of time around and all over the place. Even us as a job, when there's no guests in camp, we'll go out and we'll do what's called bush clearing. So we'll make sure that the roads are accessible to the vehicles. Sorry, this particular road's a little bit corrugated, so that's why the camera is shaking up and down a little bit. But yeah, we'll do all of that. We'll go and track things. If there's a few guides out, we'll go and look for the other animals for them so we can all help each other. I think that's a very good question to ask Steve as well. We're going to send you back to him and ask him what's his favorite part about his daily job.
Well, welcome back to the dam cam, everybody, where it is still very wet and still very raining. Such a contrast to our favorite little woodland kingfisher is back on his perch. There he is. Not the best view, I'm afraid. Favorite part about my day? It's very hard to say, everybody. I love the early morning tracking. I love the novelty, the potential that the bush has every single day. Every day it could be a new beginning. Any day you could find wild dogs, any day you could find a leopard, any day you could find anything out there. Seeing the plants as they seasonally change is also a huge bonus. I think the seasonality is one of the draw cards of this job. If it was constantly green the whole year or constantly dry the whole year, I think I'd struggle. We get the seasonality and the life and the rebirth and the death and the dying and the change. It keeps it interesting. But I love, as what my old tracker friends used to say, waking up in the morning and checking the newspaper, which is the soil, decoding what happened the night before and trying to interpret what went down each day. I don't think our day is as busy as Deirdre's. She's being in charge of the whole team there. She's got lots and lots to do in between her activities here on the show. And the fact that I get to go and do birding every day is a bonus. Many people ask me, how do I do this job every day? Yeah, no, you don't necessarily need good math subjects to be a guide. I mean, essentially, maths at school is something I did. It helped me a lot with my degree, and not having maths, I think, would have made study statistics quite difficult. But as a guide, maths isn't that important. I wouldn't say don't go and do maths. If you can do maths, I think in this world you should probably try and do it. If you can do it. If it's something that just doesn't work for you and you don't resonate with maths, well then you don't need to force that sort of thing. But there's so many different fields out there that require maths. So I think subject choices at school is quite important. So definitely the biological sciences are very important, very, very important. But subjects are changing. So it looked like some sandgrass that took off there. I couldn't really tell. Subjects are changing, but I definitely felt that doing biology at school was vitally important to help me do what I do now. But I learned a lot of what I had learned at university, and a lot of it was refreshing. Oh, the rain is making this impossible. A lot of it was refreshers. So if I hadn't done biology at school, I would have recapped it all in my first couple of years of my diploma and my degree. So it just made that a little bit easier. But statistics in the degree was very, very important to have maths, at least the ability to use Excel spreadsheets and the like. But I don't say, oh, I don't think I use maths very often. Trigonometry, no, there's no trigonometry. None of that was required. Public speaking is definitely a good one if you want to be a guide. Definitely get some public speaking going. Ability to talk to crowds, talk to people, do lectures, stand up in front of your peers and do PowerPoint slides and present topics. It's something we did a lot at university. Lots and lots of presentations, lots of standing up, lots of talking to groups. And that gives you a lot of confidence. Something my uncle actually told me many years ago is I should join a debate team or a debate sort of forum, something like that, just to give you the ability to stand up and argue. Not argue for the point of having a fight, but the point where you can debate and have discussions with people on an open forum. I think a lot of people are very scared to stand up and talk on a stage, and you find after a while people are very forgiving when you do talk. You do stand up and you show yourself, and knowing your work is important, but the ability to transfer that information is what is the difference between a very strong scientist and a guide. A guide is someone that's able to transfer information over to somebody in a very nice way, whereas some scientists are so caught up in the jargon that it's impossible for them to communicate with somebody. So being able to discuss scientific matters on a very nice, easy platform is something that takes a bit of practice. It's not about throwing the biggest words out that you can, but by no means do I throw mathematics at anybody. KB, I'm sure they are. I mean, Lauren was just talking about a new phylum that was found the other day, a jellyfish in the Kruger Park, places in the wild. We talk about the rainforest. The rainforest is so important. They are finding insects and plant life there daily that's never been discovered before, because they're such such far removed places that people have to really delve deep into a forest where a lot of things potentially can kill you. So yes, things are being discovered. In many parts of this world where we are, not many new things are being discovered. Things might be changing. Names might be splitting. New scientific names might be splitting, but I wouldn't say where we are too many things are being found at all. In saying that, a new button spider was found in the Phinda region, I think last year, might be the year before. So that's very exciting. It's quite a decent sized spider that was found in the forests there. So there's always the potential. Don't ever give up hope, everybody. Keep your scientific brain going and take photos of things, join forums, ask people. There's lots of groups on Facebook of people who know a lot about spiders, a lot about things. And if you find something that seems a bit strange, take a photo and ask. You might, everybody, discover something that no one's ever seen before. And get your name on a spider or on a plant. The wild world, there's still stuff to be discovered. Don't think it's all been found. Don't listen to me and think it's all been found. Okay, well, it's looking very, very dismal on the dam cam, everybody. I apologize for the rain and the conditions. I'm really not sure, Pile. The Sabi Sands has been around since the 60s, and when they formalized all of the smaller reserves within the Sabi Sands, I'm not even sure when they actually formalized the actual demarcating of the Sabi Sands as a nature reserve or private game reserve on its own, but the land was definitely ceded a long time ago. But it opened its fences with the Kruger National Park in the 90s. But I'll have a look, because I have some technology that I hope can help me. 1948, the Sabi Sands was established. So people have been in and around here for quite some time. And it's all private land, the Sabi Sands, joined with the Kruger. Okay, well, our dam cam is looking a little bit wet and dismal, so let's send you over to where the sun is still shining in Tswalu Kalahari.
Steve, I don't think he sees the picture, but the sun is not still shining here. The sun, there is no sun today, which is unusual. We've got pretty much, if I look around, 80% cloud cover. So no sunshine this afternoon, but yes, we do tend to have the sunset here at least half an hour later. So it is starting to fade on the lights, but fortunately these cameras are all quite good. Or quite good, they're very good actually. And we're still able to see the light. But what we'll start looking for now is that some of the nocturnal animals might start getting a little bit more active. So there is a chance that bat-eared fox, jackal, still a little bit too early for a porcupine. Maybe some of the scrub hares, the odd scrub hare decides that it wants to move around at this stage. We have seen in our little bumble, we have seen 2 gemsbok, but like the wildebeest, they also choose to run away before we can get them on camera. So sometimes if they're a bit further away, it's actually better than being right next to the vehicle. So we're just scanning to see. It is, with the grass cover so much more at the moment, it is a lot more challenging to see some of the smaller things. We haven't seen, we were just discussing earlier about a Cape Fox. We haven't seen a little Cape Fox for ages, but it's not that they've just disappeared completely, it's just that they've shifted to being slightly more nocturnal, and they're no longer raising pups at a den, so they're no longer set in one place that you can keep going to and from the place to find them. The same with the bat-eared foxes. They're moving around a lot more, and also just the visibility in the grasses is quite challenging. So you can see now the areas are slightly more open. This is the area that we were talking earlier where we would expect to potentially see a springbuck. But we're not seeing any buck of any kind at this stage. There's what we do, they've probably already all gone to bed, but you can Randall's asking the question, are there any research projects that we're currently working at with Tswalu? Yes, so most of the seasoned viewers will remember Dylan. Dylan is the head of the Research Foundation, and one of the projects that they do work on constantly is actually these birds, the white-browed sparrow weavers. These are the nests of the sparrow weavers. There's an individual researcher at the moment that's about to finish a PhD, or he has actually finished a PhD on the pygmy falcons. There is one of the researchers doing pangolin that's handed in her doctorate, so she's about to receive her doctorate in pangolin. And then there is somebody currently trying to start studying and learning a lot more about bat-eared foxes, but they're proving quite challenging because a lot of your work has to be done at night, and you also, depending on what your study is, you have to spend a lot of time with them, but they're also skittish in nature. So that's proving to be a challenging project. We do have one of the others that's doing a master's on Cape Cobra, and often finding them in and around or close to these nests, as well as the nests of the sociable weavers. And a lot of the projects, we've got the Kalahari Ecosystem Project, which is running all different types of projects, but focusing mainly on if there are any changes for climate change. So how do any of the Kalahari specific animals adapt to climate change? So animals like aardvark or aardwolf, bat-eared foxes, even sort of pangolins, they're looking at how they would do that. We've even got people researching soil, sort of microorganisms in soil, and what their response would be to a sudden average temperature increase over time, to see how the little microfauna in the soil, what would happen. And so they make sort of like fake glass boxes to increase the temperature in that area, so they can get, over time, that in their study, they can see what that response would be, and would it be potentially a detrimental response or a positive response. That's yet to be determined. And a lot of these projects are not just a quick, most master's research doctor students are doing a year, 2 years to complete their thesis, so they are spending a lot of time out in the field. At the moment, I know that some of the researchers are doing insect transects, so they're going out and setting up areas where they're trying to count, literally, it sounds strange, but count animal ant and termite numbers relative to an area to see if there's an increase compared to previous years or previous seasons, to see how that just food availability would affect animals like pangolin and aardvark. So lots of different research studies, and I know if you have a look on our Tswalu website and you found the Research Foundation, you'll actually see all the projects that have been happening. But save the questions. I believe there's fireside chat tomorrow night with Dylan Smith himself. So you've got to stay tuned tonight and tomorrow night and after tomorrow night to chat with Dylan, and you get opportunities to ask Dylan some of those questions. So that'll be tomorrow night. So stick with us. It'll be me and Dylan on fireside chat. Or Dylan and I, should I say. That sounds better. They've also done lots of previous research on meerkats, but not so much at the moment on meerkats. And because of those research projects on meerkats is why we get to see the habituated meerkats that we have at Tswalu. Hammond is asking the question, how often do we find snakes? So here on warm days and sometimes in the evening, we see the Cape Cobras and the puff adders. So it's difficult to say how often. You know, that the researcher obviously finds them more regularly than the guides, but it's difficult to say how often we would see them, but we do, if you're in the right area. Yesterday we saw a puff adder. He was one of those ones again that I saw him too late. His head was just sticking out of the bushes. Probably only about that much of his head was sticking out the grass. And as I slammed on brakes, I nearly lost Morgan because I didn't want to hit the puff adder, but obviously I was too close by that time. I reversed, hoping that the puff adder would stay where it was, but by that time it had already sort of got the fright as well, and moved into the bushes, and as you saw how thick the grasses are, he just totally disappeared. So we saw one yesterday, and you've got to be out there to see them. But going into the winter months, when it's a lot colder, a lot of the snakes then go into like a hibernation, where they go under the ground and they just they don't move at all for months at a time until the conditions are warm enough for them to start coming out and there's enough food for them as well. So here we don't tend to see too many snakes in the winter season, but going into the summer, then quite a few. We often see the tracks crossing the road. Python, puff adder, Cape Cobra. Boomslang is another one, that's sort of tree snake. We get those as well. asking the question, do I think that weather plays an influence as to when birds come out? Yes. In winter season, if it's really cold, the bird will, as soon as they wake up, they'll try and get themselves onto a branch where they can warm up in the sun. Not for necessarily as long as a meerkat would, but they do like to just get a little bit of sun in the mornings before moving on. If it's raining, they certainly look for some kind of shelter. The rain would affect or hamper their ability to fly, so they do look for shelter. Those little white-browed sparrow weavers would automatically go into those nests and wait out the rain, and they've made quite a nice little grass bowl, so it will be quite waterproof for them. The sociable weavers will just go into their big nest. Some of the other birds will rather than just sort of try and hide in a thicket to shelter out of the rain. So rain definitely affects birds. And I'm just trying to think of other forms of weather. Wind as well. Wind can hamper them quite a lot, more than you think, because if there's really, really strong winds, they struggle to fly in the direction that they want to go, and that costs energy. If they want to fly back to their nest and the wind is blowing quite strong, that's going to take energy to get there because they're going to be fighting the wind. Sometimes you see a hornbill take off and he actually wants to go that way, but the wind's blowing him that way, and that causes him to actually have to sort of beat his wings a lot harder to go in the other direction. So not too much moving around at this stage from what I can see at a long distance. So these are nice areas to drive because we've got quite good visibility. And we haven't had our regular animal run across because we've quite a few of our driving segments we've been able to have an animal dash across the screen. The other day it was warthog, then it was the steenbok. So we're going to see if we can hopefully find one or two nocturnal animals. We're going to send you back to Steve. Hopefully he can find something in the dam cam.
Well, DJ, good luck with your nocturnal animal search. We have found one right in front of the dam cam. The scrub hare has come out in the rain. When you get so hungry, it doesn't matter what the weather conditions are. You have to eat, don't you? Indeed. Some nice skills there with the ears. Remember, we're looking at them with the thermal, or should I say the infrared light. Feeding on little bits of grass, maybe some of the forbs. The weeds, as we discussed in the early bit of the show. Roger's very simple, really. Hares and rabbits, the major difference is the breeding. The hares are born with hair, their eyes open, and without requiring as much parental care, whereas rabbits are born in burrows, naked, blind, and requiring enormous amounts of parental care. It's the same as birds born in nests versus birds born sort of on the ground nests. The two terms precocial versus altricial, very important terms. We are altricial, meaning enormous amounts of parental care required. If you left a human baby, it would not survive, as with many birds in nests and trees. If you left them without parental care, they would not survive. But precocial, in the form of lambs, like with impala or wildebeest, I'm not saying all of them will survive, but they are born at a more developed stage so as to be able to be more active and more sort of survivable. They're born far more developed with the ability to move about and fend for themselves or eat for themselves. That has the potential to increase the breeding. The parents are not required to provide as much care, so they can breed more regularly. But you will sometimes find a female out and about like this with the youngster suckling. They still do suckle, but the baby's able to move about and probably starts feeding at a far earlier stage. Leopard lover, I'm not sure actually. They probably comb them with their feet. They got little nails on their feet. Or they can bend them over and groom them with their teeth. Or they get their partners to do so. I'm not really sure at the internal workings of the scrub hair warren where exactly the tick removal process happens. But if it happened, everybody, I would like James Henry to narrate it when we see it. And just like that, our hair is gone. Too quick for me. If you're just joining everybody, it is myself on the dam cam, and if you hear these little clicking sounds, it is the fact that I don't have a joystick. What you're seeing is happening with the amazing manual power of my index finger on a mouse. So I do apologize for the focus every now and again, but when the rain falls, it does influence the focus as well. Jacqueline, no, the trees out in the wild are doing it all on their own. Obviously, lodge decorations and in and around some of the lodges, like in Sambeto when it was established, some trees are planted. So tree planting does occur in some lodges, in and around the lodges, but re-establishment of trees out in the bush isn't a common practice out here. There's just too many animals that want to eat it. So it's not like reforesting. Out in the wilderness, I got quite a few friends who do lots of tree projects, the Precious Tree Project and the like, that are reforesting parts of South Africa with indigenous trees. Those are in areas where we don't have elephants that are eating them up. So if you plant a tree out here, it's going to be a nursery-fed tree. It's going to be a tree that has been looked after, and it's going to be tasty and delicious, and it's going to get eaten very, very quickly. So we have nyalas and bushbuck that come into our camps that love feeding on the trees that were planted when the new buildings were built down there where I live, and Lauren and Darby live. But for the most part, no, there's no replanting of trees out here. It's all natural in the way of re-establishment of the vegetation. If anything, there's a removal of bushes in parts, because bush encroachment, as I spoke about before, is on the up. A lot of that's due to the lack of fire, due to the removal of grass vegetation, due to too many water points in areas that water probably wasn't as common or popular or as profound. And so ecologically, bush encroachment, together with the increase in carbon in the atmosphere, is on the up. Fire is ecological sort of remover of trees once they reach a certain size, but without the fuel, the fire has got no way of burning hot enough to kill the saplings.
How insane is that animal?
This is out of this world. Fantastic. Good, Mama.
Wow, what a way to start off. Just such an incredible privilege to be out here. It just keeps on delivering.
There you go, there you go. Heart is pumping right now.
3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
Look at this, everybody. We've got a live kill.
croc's holding the tail, it's holding tight. Lucky wildebeest.
There's nowhere to go. This is a disaster in the making.
This is the first leucistic zebra I have ever seen in my life.
Oh, here comes a lion. Run, little guy. Go on.
Something that I have never seen before in my entire life that you are now watching live.
My heart is in my mouth, everybody.
Look at this. It's gonna make it. It's going, it's going.
This is just too magical. Hi, little guys. That's great, isn't it?
Has it just pretended to be dead? That is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Look at that. Scuba Steve has got a friend.
You've got a friend in me. It couldn't be a better morning. This is just too special.
Oh my goodness, we've got a turtle.
How epic is the fact that we're coming to you live from the Chobe River? It's the most incredible feeling to be here. This is live and we're in Rwanda. This is a very, very different adventure, charged with emotion.
Look at that little zebra about to be born. There's the head. Oh, you clever mare. Well done.
I did not think I would ever face my fears like this.
So, we were just, tonight unfortunately, there is going to be no sunset because it's just cloud cover. So even the slight sort of purple glint on the western horizon won't really show up in the camera. So I think it's our first time that we're saying we can't actually show you a sunset, which is quite surprising. But it is overcast. We've got beautiful sort of mountains as we bumble towards home. But it has been a really awesome afternoon for all of you joining us and all of you asking all of your questions. My parents did say when I was young that I'd be able to talk the hind leg off a donkey. I think I've probably proved that today because I was saying to Morgan, I think I'm going to need a throat lozenge because hopefully tomorrow I don't have laryngitis because, I have talked a lot today, but thank you very, very much for all of your questions. It does help us when we're down on feeds, and when I say down on feeds because of rain and weather, it always helps when all the viewers participate in asking all the questions, because as a guide, it stimulates you to think of another question, answer in another way, you can elaborate even more, it makes you think about other things and tell stories. So everybody's viewer participation is really, really appreciated. I'm still waiting to hear what Morgan's superpower is, and he was like, well, I was also going to say flying, but then it would look bad if I chose the same one as you. So Morgan's is flying, just by the way, because I asked him why didn't he answer on air. So they're having a good laugh at the back because I have almost once or twice sent Morgan flying against his own free will when we've been on our way busy to get somewhere. I do think that the other morning we were zipping for the mother and 3 cheetah, and we went into a ditch that we didn't quite expect to be as deep as it was, and Morgan got some flying miles, but he's still on board. I said we'll have to install a seatbelt for him so that when we are on our way to go and get to a sighting, we can get there safely. And yesterday afternoon, to be fair, to get back before that lightning came in, it was pretty close. Is saying that the Tswalu scenery still looks beautiful even without a sunset. I do agree. We've got such variety in the terrain. We are incredibly lucky. I mean, if you go east-west over the dunes or north-south along the mountain range, every day is a different view and a different scenery. So, absolutely beautiful. Hopefully everybody can book their ticket the next time travel is a little bit more viable and come and see Tswalu for themselves. Oh, there was something that just dashed across the road. I think that was our jackal in the dark. Just a quick zip across the road. Let's see. Maybe there's a last one that wants to do a cameo for the camera. Oh, no. There goes his tail. He's long gone. We're definitely not going to be able to get him. He's a lastminute.com and he missed his minute. So, once again, thanks to all the viewers for your participation. You can catch up with us tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Central African time from myself and Steve on the Dam Cam. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.